Greetings, dear listeners and watchers. You are tuning in to Horror Nerds at Church, a ridiculously queer podcast where we take a deep dive into a horror film and talk about how it connects to queerness, religion, and theology. I'm Pastor Emily, and I'm pro animal rights all the way.
Love it. Samesies. I'm Dr. Pace, and
Woo
something
woo!
has changed within me. Something is not the same. Oh,
Are you through
I'm
with
trans. Holy shit.
playing by the rules of someone
Someone
else's
else's
game?
game.
Game?
Yeah. Someone else's gender game. Someone else's gender.
Hey
Yeah.
yo.
I am Susanna, and I am the shards of glass stabbing ceilings since birth.
I love it.
Nice.
Um, Follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/horror nerds at church. It starts at only $5 to sign up. And dropping this month on Patreon, you get dropping in May in Patreon. I'll commit to that since today is April 30th, the last day of April. Dropping in May on Patreon, you get the backlog of like 10 or so episodes that are just been recorded but have yet to be edited. So congrats, Patreon supporters. It's a perfect time though. If you only want to sign up for 1 month, you're gonna be getting like 10 episodes at once. So
It's true.
um
Plus all of the backlog.
yes. So like Patreon, we have two tiers. Horror Buffs is our super cool tier where you get all the tea about my life and some of the tea about Emily's life. And you get uh a extra movie episode once a month in theory. Um and then so like this season we've done things like um now I'm like literally every single one we've done.
The
Oh,
Wiz.
the that was a movie commentary, wasn't
Oh,
it?
I
Yes,
don't
and
know.
Wiz was a movie commentary. See, I was thinking of all the movie commentaries too. So you get, I know what's coming up though, is you get Bewitched, the movie. Um, yeah. And also we've done the Witch, the Roald Dahl movie. That's one of the ones we did. I finally remember that. So like there's a variety of stuff we've done on there. So that's for our horror buff tier. Our horror nerd tier is $5 and to sign up. And on that you get a movie commentary once a month, and that is where we've done movie commentaries on things like The Wiz and The Vivitch and stuff like that this season. And you also get a BooTube episode, which we've been using to cover movie, not movies, TV shows about witches that we didn't have time to fit in
Like
to our season.
Charmed
Yeah,
and
Charmed,
Sabrina.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Also,
And
our horror buffs is where we do our Friday the 13th episodes whenever there's a Friday the
yes,
13th,
true.
because we've technically already done them on this podcast, but I've not seen them. So,
Yeah, it's fun. Every time there's Friday 13th, we have it. We made it through Friday 13th 3D. So this year there's one Friday 13th. I think it's
yeah.
somewhere like around August or somewhere. No, maybe it's like
June.
November, June.
It's June.
Oh,
We have a
perfect.
lovely list
So
in our.
yeah, coming up soon, we'll be doing Friday 13th, the final chapter. Was it the final chapter?
No.
No, there are 13 or 12 entries in that franchise, and we're only on 4. So we have many Friday 13th to come.
We're planning on this podcast lasting well into 2029, just
Yep.
on that fact alone.
Yeah,
And also the fact that we have like a million different ideas for seasons, but
I know. This podcast is too fun for us to just not continue until we either burn out or die or the world collapses, whatever comes first.
It's true. And right now, those are all happening at once, and we're still going. So
Yep. I will say I'll take these glasses off. I know it's reflecting stuff, and I don't want all of y'all complaining in the comments. I know. I'm gonna take them off in a little bit, but I'm leaving them on now because I'm
you're too
vibing.
cool.
I don't know.
You're too cool for school. That's fair.
I guess so. Yeah.
Um, if you are listening to this episode on your favorite podcast provider, make sure you check the show notes for any content warnings for this episode and links to all the books we mentioned on our bookshop.org store. And for everyone who is watching or listening, check the show notes for links to our newsletter, merch store, and Patreon.
Beautiful.
Woot woot.
Well, I don't have any announcements other than we are catching up on our backlog. So just checking in. How have y'all been? It's been an extra week since we recorded last, so 3 weeks. So sure been a lot going on in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think Jesus died or something
Yeah,
in
and came
there.
back.
Yeah, weird. I hear he's having a barbecue on the beach on Sunday, so
Yeah, I'm excited.
super
There's some
excited.
penetration this past
I'll
Sunday,
maybe see that.
touching some wound.
Yeah, checking out top surgery. So much
Yeah,
goodness. This is the Gospel of John's nerdy resurrection references. Um, yeah. Anyway, I don't even know. Oh, oh, I'm so excited. Hang on. I finished There is a Door in This Darkness and started a new book. And I didn't tell Pace what book I started because I wanted it to be a
ooh.
surprise.
Yay.
I started Star Wars Leia, Princess of Alderaan by friend of the podcast, Claudia Gray.
Yeah, go back and listen
And
to that episode. It's a great episode.
yeah, it is a fantastic episode, and we can link to it in the show notes. Um, I am only a couple chapters in because I read books usually when I'm like going to sleep, so I fall asleep. But I like it. It's cute so far. I'm a fan.
I
She's
love it.
about to try and find her way down a mountain for a wayfinding course or something.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
good, it's a fun book. I enjoyed it. The whole Leia trilogy, it's kind of an unintentional trilogy, but it really makes a nice trilogy, is fantastic.
I'm
So
excited for it.
yeah.
Yeah, but I was really excited when I was like, okay, I'm ready to start the books. And then I had to keep it a secret for like a week.
I love it. I'm impressed, honestly. It's rare that Emily can keep a secret.
Actually, it's not. I'm really good at surprises, and this was a surprise. So I can keep it a surprise. Yeah. Also, I did, yeah, job stuff is going pretty well. Um, my puppers can't come to work with me because they get too stressed out by so many people at my job, which is a little sad, but it's good to know. She would chew, she would chew everything. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So, and then I'm on year 4 of Stardew Valley. What are you on, Susanna?
Recording in progress.
It's dead. Mhm.
Yeah, I love it.
It's cozy socialism.
I love it. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I it got me through a chunk of my doctorate. Um, I know. There was a there's legit so there's legit a meme that someone sent me today that if I text it to you, could you put it up somewhere, Susanna? Okay, I'm gonna text it to you. Um, because I have to explain this meme. The meme says, here, then a picture of a hole, have a little void to scream into as a treat. And I believe it is to be read as, here is a hole, have a little void to scream into as a treat, which in and of itself can be taken by like people in all sorts of directions. But
Mhm.
that's not even how I read it the first time. I read it as here, comma, hole, as a term of address, as in a degradation kink of saying here, hole,
Ah.
blah, 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 blah. And it took me a good 2 or 3 minutes to figure out, oh, that's not how this meme is supposed to be read. This is not degradation kink here. I mean, it can be. You can definitely read it that way, but that's not the intention, I don't think. The intention is saying, here is a hole for you to scream into the void. As we often say, the black abyss or the black hole to scream into, the void in which we all need to scream into at the state of the world. So yes,
Mhm.
very relevant meme. And also,
Mhm.
for someone who is asexual, you would think I would be different, but I'm not.
No,
So I guess I
not for
should
a
say what,
face who is asexual.
yeah, I guess I should say what I have been up to. So there's a problem when I think companies are catching on to the fact that tax returns for people who are poor or low income or live paycheck to paycheck tends to be not a consistent thing, but a sometimes chunk of a little bit of extra spending money.
Mhm.
And so companies are starting to advertise to this, including Shout Factory, who has the subsidiary label Scream Factory, which is a horror film
Mhm.
distributor for Blu-ray and 4Ks. And they had a member sale, and I am in fact a member. Member is just it's free. It just means you collect points every time you make a purchase, and surprise, surprise, pays makes probably too many purchases from that site. And so
Mhm.
for members, a few weeks ago, they had a sale that was like up to like 50% off on 4K discs. And 4K discs are usually like 35, $40 pop. So like getting many of these for under $20, which is like unheard of pricing for a lot of these. I was like, huh, I have this windfall of money from not that much. I'm not rich, come on. But like I have a chunk of money from this tax return. And for me, unless I am super behind on bills, I always am like, I feel like it's a rare instance I can actually use money to treat myself since I have issues with that, as many of us who were raised poor do or low income do. And so I decided to treat myself with this sale. And I got a whole chunk of 4Ks. And I'm not going to talk about all of them tonight, but one of the ones I got is one we've covered on this podcast this season, which is My Bloody Valentine. I got the 4K
Yes.
Collector's Edition, which has an uncut version of the film, which I don't think I saw. I don't think that's the one I saw when I watched this.
Ooh.
The uncut version is only like 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes longer, so not much longer, but there's like one scene it adds and a little bit of extra gore. But the one scene it adds actually like had one piece of dialogue in there that makes the movie make more sense for me. So I was like,
Ooh.
interesting. So if you can find, I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you can find it, check out the uncut version of that movie. But with it, I got the collector's edition because it was so cheap. And so it came with this heart-shaped box that says My Bloody Valentine on it. And the back has
That's so
the guy in it.
cute.
And in the heart-shaped box are enamel pins. And I love me an enamel pin. I am one of those who, through my entire college and master's degree wears, had a jacket full of enamel pins. And this is their enamel pins, which are so freaking cute. Love it.
Yeah.
So that is my thing. So I've been basically watching 4K movies that I got fairly cheap. Um, so that's what I've been up to. Uh,
Nice.
And to assuage anyone's fears, I know last year I was talking a lot about the books I've been reading, and last year I read like 150 books. Um, Emily was saying, "Oh, I only read a chapter or two a night because I fall asleep." I have not finished a single book yet this year.
Mm.
So do not feel,
Actually, that's not true.
is it
You
not?
finished your dissertation.
I finished
Oh.
writing a book, which counts as reading in a way.
It
Yes.
does. It really,
It,
really,
it
really
no
does.
matter what it, I mean, you had to read it multiple times to finish it.
Yes,
And you finished a book,
I
which is
did.
not the way
Yeah,
most people think of it.
I
Blah, ha,
did.
ha, ha.
And the
Yeah,
book is I was just going to say the book is published by the Graduate Theological Union and available for free online that anyone can get because I paid the extra money because I believe that academic scholarship should be accessible. You can find it online
agreed.
through I'll find the link for the show notes. I won't be able to remember off the top of my head, but basically, there's a site that collects dissertations, an academic site, and most of them are pay only, but you can pay extra as the person who wrote and submitted the dissertation to make it public access, which I did for mine. So everyone is
Well
welcome to
done,
read
you.
my book if they would like to.
Well
It's
done,
academic-y
you.
and nerdy and a dissertation. So dissertation is the genre that parts of it are just by nature have to be dry and a little bit inaccessible. But by and large, I think the second half is I try to make as accessible as possible, and that's the
Yep.
fun stuff. So,
I was gonna say that's the fun part anyway. Yeah. Um, I was gonna say I remember when I finished my other book because on Good Friday, I needed to just like go and be away from the house and all the chaos and everything and be by myself for a little bit because introvert. So I told Susanna that I was gonna go finish my book and then have some ice cream. And she was like, "That's a great idea, but you should have ice cream whether or not you finish it. Like, don't restrict that." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna finish it. I only have a couple chapters left." And I held up the book, and she was like, "Oh," because she thought I meant the book that I am writing and
Oh,
illustrating, which is coming along significantly slower. Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
not that kind
There's
of finishing.
all different speeds to write a book, and that is
True,
okay. It took
true.
me 10 years to write my book. Well, over that, but 10 years of actively working on it. So
Yeah.
some people do theirs in like a month, and power to them.
Yeah, that blows my mind, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I've already started on a second book though, but this one's fiction. I was having fun until
Oh yeah.
death in the family. Oh, that also happened. There's a death in my family. My
Oh yeah.
stepmother passed away uh the week before Holy Week.
Yeah.
And so that has happened as well. Sophia Chatos. So yeah, that's all that's been going on in my life. Easter, death in the family, watching horror movies. Same old, same old.
Like you do.
Like you do. Um, Now moving on to our next segment, Politics Nerds at Church, which is a segment we're doing for the remainder of the season and possibly, as in probably continuing on for future, is that because of the hellscape we live in with this world and stuff, we want to just check in about some of this political stuff going on. Since we are all queer here and a lot of our audience is queer, we can kind of share resources and
Mhm.
analysis and action items and all that stuff. So when we were initially supposed to record this before illness and life and everything got in the way, it was the day after Pope Francis had died,
Mm.
which he'd passed away Easter Monday morning. We were originally going to record this the Tuesday after Easter. And so fresh in my mind was the controversy, because this is Horror Nerds at Church, and this is a particularly religious political thing that happened. J.D. Vance, who is the
Killed the
vice
Pope.
president of this country, yes, he killed the Pope. Um, Not actually, but that's the joke. I mean, honestly, he could have just with his dour attitude and
I
awfulness,
mean, it was a stroke, so like
right?
increasing the
Just
Pope's
dealing with
blood
him is
pressure,
enough to give a
frustration,
stroke,
all of that.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So they had a disagreement over a J.D. Vance and the Pope, to be clear, Pope Francis had a disagreement over a Catholic teaching, since J.D. Vance is allegedly Catholic. Um,
Oh gosh.
this Catholic doctrine called Ordo Amaris. And so I just want to talk about this because it's weird that something like this deeply nerdy religious becomes a political talking point. And so I think this is like the perfect thing to talk about here. Um, Ordo Amaris is a Catholic teaching, ethical teaching, or that basically comes about from the Middle Ages and can even be traced to before then with Augustine, late classical era, early medieval period. Um, this doctrine that basically God says to love everyone and love your neighbor, and the neighbor includes everyone in the entirety of the world.
Hmm.
Catholic theologians at the time are wondering how that is possible because it's impossible. You cannot love everybody you encounter. It's just because you can't, not just people you encounter, but people you don't even meet. Like, how can you tangibly love something? And so they're like, since this is an impossible task that tasks us to anyway, but it's something that can never fully be realized in this life, that we will say that there is an ethical order to how you should love your neighbor. And the ethical order is to love your local community first, and then the global community second. And that is meant specifically to, in a sense, in Augustine, of act locally, think globally,
Hmm.
not you're supposed to love your family, then your uh, neighbors in your living vicinity, then you can start worrying about migrant communities and all that other stuff. But first, you have to
Yeah.
make sure you protect your own. And
that's
that's the way
more
J.D. Vance has
Confucian
interpreted
and
this.
also not how Confucius actually was.
Yeah. And so that is how J.D. Vance um, commented on Ordo Amaris, because rightly so, people have been asking him, how can you proclaim to be a Catholic and
Mm-hmm.
say that you do not care about the immigrant, or that you are doing all these awful things to the immigrant, to the
Yeah.
undocumented, especially to the undocumented people among us, but even to citizens among us and people here on legal visas among us? How can we be doing these horrible things? And JD Vance says, well, it's the teaching of Ordo Amaris. I'm just following Catholic teaching. And who other than Pope Franny herself clapped back and said, that is not a valid interpretation of Ordo Amaris.
I mean, Pope Francis was one of the few that was clapping back at
Yes.
both 1.0 and 2.0.
And so
So,
love this whole drama. Like, so rare is it that we have this beautiful drama. And to this degree.
mhm.
And so Pope Francis interpreted it the way that should be interpreted, and the way that like Augustine and others meant it, which is basically you do service to your immediate neighbor as a way of loving your global community, but your neighbor is not just your family and your the people who
Yeah.
look like you and or your church community or shit like that. It is literally the people who are on your doorstep asking for food you're supposed to love
Right, like
concretely in order to
that's the
love the
most
community at large.
obvious. uh, Your neighbor is not your family members in your house. That by
Yes.
definition is your family members in your house.
Yes.
Like
So
just ugh.
I'll post a link to. So Francis wrote an entire letter back, this theological letter against J.D. Vance, essentially, subtweeting
Wait,
him,
is
as we say.
that why he wanted to visit the Pope?
Yes.
And
So,
then the Pope was like, "Here's my underling."
yes.
And he was like,
So
"No, tantrum."
the Pope has been ill, but J.D. Vance has been so mad about this that he and Donald Trump pulled all the strings they could, because the Pope was initially refusing to meet with them, to meet with the Pope on Easter, on Holy Saturday and Easter,
Which
of
is
the busiest time,
ridiculous.
most holy time of the year. And they strong armed this meeting with the Pope, and the Pope
Mhm.
dies within 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, and the Pope didn't go on Holy Saturday. The Pope
Yes.
sent his like deputy or whatever to meet with JD Vance, and then JD Vance threw his tantrum, and then on Easter Sunday.
Yep. It's just a mess. And so, and now you have like fucking Lindsey Graham saying that Donald
Oh my
Trump should be
gosh.
elected Pope, and like,
And
just
Donald Trump
what
saying he
is
should
this
be Pope.
world?
Like,
What is this world? He's not a fucking cardinal. You can't do that.
that's not how it works.
Whatever. It just,
But
it's,
did you hear that the cardinal from Palestine, his last name means pizza dance?
I did not hear that. I love it. I have not
Yeah,
been following the conclave.
I
Or
think
right now it's morning before the conclave, but yeah.
yeah, I think John Oliver is the one who said it in his latest show. My mom actually, because she has, all the ability to travel internationally without fear, is in Rome, sent me a picture of Rome like today or yesterday. I was like, what a time to have accidentally already planned this trip to be there right as the conclave is beginning. But yeah.
I love it.
hmm Um, yeah. Also, I think maybe Susanna had a thing.
Yeah, I do. So,
Politicsy?
this was the thing that I wanted to talk about was Abrego Garcia. Um, the Abrego Garcia case, as y'all know, is a legal resident who's from Maryland, my home state, Pace's home state, where Emily is living right now. So this hits home for us. Legal resident, was here legally, no criminal record. Administration kidnaps him and sends him to a slave prison camp in El Salvador, which is not the country he's from, by the way. And
So he's actually from El Salvador, but that is the one country that they said you absolutely cannot, like, there's actual
oh,
legal ruling that he can't be sent to El
he can't be.
Salvador because he had credible fear because of
Yes. Well,
the way
let's
gangs were
talk
trying to
about
recruit
that.
him.
What is credible fear? Asylum is legal immigration. Okay? We'll say it louder for the people in the back. Asylum is legal immigration. It is not illegal, it is legal. It is a legal form of immigration. When you are given asylum, you have legally immigrated. That is what it is. Okay? So he had that.
No, he
was
didn't.
I thought he did.
No. So Kilmar Abrego de Garcia had applied for asylum, and he met all of the requirements
Met all the
except
requirements.
except for a timeline thing that it was just outside of the time limit when he applied or when they were like doing the rulings. So they couldn't grant him asylum because of this, not because he didn't have a credible case. Everything was credible. Everything the judge was like, you should be like basically you should be granted asylum except this technicality of timing that it has too much time has passed since whatever. Um, so instead, the judge did a thing that actually like has, I think, even higher standards of like credit. You have to prove even higher credibility of threat, so that ruled that he could not be deported back to El Salvador. It didn't rule that he can't be deported anywhere, just not to El Salvador.
But he had legal residency here while
Yes.
this was pending. It was a
Hmm.
legal residency. And Trump has said that if he can do it with, I mean, Trump has insinuated that he's willing to do it to U.S. citizens too.
Hmm.
So like,
He has.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I
He's
really
deported
want
like
to be.
babies with cancer.
Oh my God, I can't even with that. Anyway, my point is that I wanted to talk to you about scripts. Um, you're gonna see when you're doing actions online, especially with something like this, and this is really important. Like, you're gonna be asked to call your representative, not just email. And when you do, it's really important. Like, they're gonna get the same call over and over and over. And when you call, you're gonna be the equivalent of 5 people who feel the same way as you, but and will vote the same way as you, but didn't make a call. So you're representing 5 other people when you do that, okay? So you want to make it quick and you want to make it clear. You want to say who you are, that you're a member of the district, and that you oppose this and you expect your elected representative to oppose this and to stand up to Trump on this. To do everything that they can. It for this podcast, now you're going to hear that advice in a lot of places. Say who you are, say you're part of the district. I'm telling you, say you are a person of faith. Say, I am a person of faith in your district and I am calling about. That gives the staffer right there where what box of issues to check that you're calling about and whether you're pro or against. And that it's a call will equal 5 of those. So do it quick. Say your name. Make sure you mention that you're a member of the district. And even if your congressperson is doing something, even if your congressperson is Cory Booker and is standing up for 25 hours, then you're saying I am so and so. I'm a person of faith in your district, and I am calling about. And in that case, you say I want to thank you for XYZ, but you call about every single thing. And on this particular thing, you say, I want to know what you're doing about it. I expect you to do something about it, and I want to know what you're doing about it. And if you're feeling particularly righteous, you can go on and on and on about the Bible and about welcoming the stranger and about Lot, because Trump just basically did what the people of Sodom and Gomorrah did, and like stole the stranger, kidnapped them, wanted to kidnap the stranger, and that's what Trump basically did.
Mhm.
Totally, Trump kidnapped the angel who came to the country, and I mean it's very biblical. There are lots of ways you can go about talking about that, but but the things I really want to make sure that you are clear: say your name, make sure you verify that you are part of the district, and make sure you say you're a person of faith, because that's going to matter. They do count. They don't like to admit it, but they do count how many people of faith are calling. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this case. Say that you are expecting them to oppose, and ask them what they are doing to oppose.
Yeah.
And if they say that they are doing something to oppose, and you agree with that thing, then thank them for it. Don't just call when you're mad. Call when you're happy too. But I just wanted to get that script. It'll take 5 seconds of your time. Like they're getting so many calls. So,
and this includes Democrats. It is not just if you're if you're Republican, it's really important. If you're Democrat, it's really important.
It's still really
for different
important
reasons.
Because otherwise, Democrats will write a strongly worded letter.
If you're
They sound like
not,
Lutherans.
yeah, if you're neither Democrat or Republican, it is also important because you are still a member of that constituency. So you should call your representative regardless.
I think I meant if your representative is
Is a
Democrat,
Democrat
or
whether it's
like
a Democrat
whatever party
or a
they're
Republican.
in.
Because right now, Republicans are putting heat. They're willing to put on heat about the tariffs. They're willing to call a vote about the tariffs because big businesses are losing money. So there's so much money that are being lost about the tariffs. Republicans are starting to remember that they actually have the power of Congress.
And that they were paid and bought for by businesses.
They were, and it's true, but my point is that they're remembering that they're the check. They're the balance. And it's taken them a long time to get there. But if they get more calls about anything, it will help them find their spine. But on this one, it's particularly important because this is a constitutional crisis. The Supreme Court has said, do everything you can to bring him home. And they've said, it's not our jurisdiction. When the executive arm of the government defies the judicial, that is a constitutional crisis. And it's really important that Congress be able to step in. Because at some point, if this continues, Congress is going to have to be the one. Congress has the power to censure, to bring down, to impeach the president. So it's really important that Congress start feeling the heat, because they're not going to do that unless they felt the heat big time, and they need to feel the heat from people of faith. So,
and maybe
what your name is, they'll cut you off really, 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 really fast. They'll be like, okay, I got it, da da da. So your name, that you're from the district, and that you're a person of faith. Sorry, Emily, go ahead.
I was just saying, maybe not so much that they will find a spine, but find their courage.
Find their courage.
Because you don't have to have a spine. It doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't have to be strong. You just have to be courageous.
Yes, as a person with a crap spine. Yes, I agree.
And to be clear, another thing of how, this is what you're saying, is exactly why the three branches of government are supposed to be able to provide checks and balances. But if one of the branches of government is too scared to do anything, then that is what allows these crises to continue. And also, regardless of whether a person is Democrat or Republican, as Emily was saying, also, some of the Democrats are not really taking much action on it, or are just being like,
oh yeah,
not that big of a deal. So people are not even voting along party lines on this. Just because your person's a Democrat does not mean that they're not being
absolutely. And if they say we oppose, you are welcome to say how. What are you going to do? What action are you going to take? This is their job. Their job is to answer to you.
Yeah. And I was going to say, not all of the Democrats are falling in line, as Pace said, but also none of the Democrats are doing everything in their power. They are still letting legislation move forward that is other legislation that causes harm, even if it's not as great and egregious of harm, instead of stopping everything because we are in a constitutional crisis and the president is engaging fascism and creating like sending people to literal concentration camps. So no one is doing everything they can.
Yes.
I'm going to pop in just a very quick sample, change it how you want script. It's so tiny. It's so tiny. Don't let them cut you off. Say the whole thing. Make sure that you say your name, you're a person from their district, and you're a person of faith. And this is just an example, and you can do what you want with it. Like, you can change it, you can, do it different ways, you can make it, like, if it's a person who isn't doing anything, you could say, what do I want? What are you doing about it? If it's a person who says, we really are strongly opposing, you can, edit it how you want. It's just a real quick, this is not going to be a long conversation. They just want to get you down, who you are, what your, like, demographic is, and that you're from the district, and you're yes or no.
If you're in Iowa, you could reference that Iowa actually has a great history of welcoming immigrants and that Iowa's economy is almost entirely dependent on it. Just saying. It's almost like I lived there once upon a time.
Yep.
Anyway,
And
yeah.
there's so much too we could talk about with trans stuff right now, but I don't think I personally, as a trans person, I'm in a space where I want to talk about it, but there's a lot of shit going down there too. It's not good.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe next week.
yeah, maybe.
For me, the reason I picked this one was because if Congress does not check the president when the president is defying the Supreme Court constitutional crisis, I'm all about using the system to, I want to use the system to pressure people to do all kinds of things on all kinds of issues. But if the system isn't working because there's a bunch of people that are deciding they don't want to do their job, then there's nothing we can do about any of the issues that really, really matter to us. And I'm really kind of freaked out about it. The constitutional crisis. Particularly, that's why he has the presidency, right? Republicans have the presidency, Republicans have the Senate, Republicans have the House. If they wanted to do these things via policy, they could. If this was about policy, they'd pass some fucking policy. But it isn't about policy. It's about power. And that's why they're gutting the system, changing all the departments. That's why they're not running any bills through Congress, even though they have all the votes. They're not interested in passing policy. They're interested in taking power and getting rid of checks and balances. So this is a crucial moment in history to assert those checks and balances. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just I'm terrified because there's a lot of issues I really freaking care about.
It's very terrifying. And I also think, yeah, I'm terrified too. It's a really scary time. And has been, but the constitutional crisis adds another level of horror to it. I think going forward, starting with this episode, I think I'm going to try on our podcast feeds to put our politics nerds at church mini segment as a mini episode, because I feel like that's more accessible and you can just listen to that if you just want to catch that, even if you're not interested in the movie, because I think this stuff is important, and that way hopefully you can keep up with that stuff.
When you have the spoons, love. When
Yes.
you have the spoons, love, because you being sane and being able to have your sanity and your serenity and your I should be doing that, and I know I should be doing that, and I'm coming out of the migraines and everything, but I want you to be safe and happy and have serenity, because it's a long haul ahead for a trans person. So when you have the spoons, sure, when you don't have the spoons, no pressure, because I know that that's
Oh, yeah.
something I should be doing as a cis person in particular.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. Um, kind of this, there's no way to transition to this, but I'm going to try anyway. Um, talking about things that are kind of trans,
Mm-hmm.
Wicked, part one. Directed by John M. Chu, who is most known before this, I believe, for directing Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights being the
Mm.
Lin-Manuel Miranda's
I've
musical.
seen both of those.
I love it.
I'm just
So
proud.
he directed both of those, and this is uh and he's directing both Wicked Part One and Part Two, which will come out this year, the year we are recording this in November or December of this year. Um, So since this was just last year, I feel like it's a little silly to contextualize by talking about every single big movie that came out because it's pretty much any movie you remember in recent memory has come out in the past year. Um, so I instead said it may be fun to talk about like ones that were particularly memorable for us or ones that we are our favorites from the past year. So for me, it's I Saw the TV Glow, still my favorite movie of last year. Just beautiful movie. Directed by speaking of trans stuff, was directed by a trans director and just is a beautiful story. Um, and horror. And then also Substance and Heretic are close seconds for fun horror movies that came out last year. And then Inside Out 2 and Anora are two other films that just really stood out to me. Anora is, of course, the Academy Award winner as well. And it's just a really fun movie, like drama movie about a sex worker basically standing up for herself in not a way that is like the typical sex worker story, but this one is like a real like this is a sex worker seeking her agency, even if her agency is sometimes making bad decisions, as opposed to those narratives that are like basically still saying the sex worker is inherently virtuous, which is its own kind of weird narrative, belittling narrative that robs agency. So, Honora, good movie. Uh, what about you, Emily? What movie stood out to you from 2024?
Okay, so I'm doing the opposite of you because I watched so few movies out right now outside of podcast land. Um, and I'm also not counting all of the like Seven Cherry Lanes and stuff that I watched on Hallmark in the winter times.
Yes.
Um, I have not yet seen Moana 2 because I have not been to like theaters and things. But I loved Inside Out 2, which was fantastic, and The American Society of Magical Negroes, which was really well done, I thought. Um, Apparently I saw the TV Glow, but I have no recollection of it. I probably should have like looked at the uh movie poster to refresh my memory, but according
It's
to
the
Pace,
one you
I
kept
watched it.
thinking well, maybe this will help. You kept thinking it was called The Pink Opaque, which is a show within a show, when the film is actually called I Saw a TV Glow, but it's about a TV show called The Pink Opaque. That doesn't seem to be ringing any bells either.
Nope. Um, I mean, I just Googled it and is it the like, oh, I kind of remember it, I think. I don't, anyway, it blends into all the other horror movies, I guess. And then the two Christmas movies that made it onto the Pace's Wikipedia list of American films of 2024 were Red One and Carry On. Carry On. Sorry. Keep like Carry On. Keep calm and carry on. It's not like that. It's Carry On like a carry on.
Yeah.
Those I liked both of them. They were more actiony. Carry On definitely had like Die Hard vibes, but less massive testosterone-y.
No,
Yes.
I still felt there was a lot of massive testosterone in that one.
Yes, but not quite as much as John McClane.
Okay.
I felt like there was not quite as much as John McClane. In terms of like the stuff, but I really liked them both. So
Mhm.
those were mine. I don't know, Suzanne. Suzanne, I don't know if you saw this part too.
No, I did not see this part. What exactly is the question? I was
Your
making
favorite
What was
movie
your
notes
of
favorite movie of
2024.
last year,
of last
2024?
year.
Mm-hmm.
And it can include, so to clarify, while you think, Susanna, to clarify something Emily brought up, is I sent a list of Wikipedia of lists of American films of 2024, and it is a comprehensive list of all theatrically released. So if it had a streaming only debut, not wide release even, if it just never made it, its premiere was not in the theater, then it would not make on the list.
And
And
it
so
had to be a
some made for
movie?
TV movies are not in there.
Okay, so and it had to be a movie?
It could be a TV show. I don't care. We're saying this broadly.
We're
Usually we say movies,
contextualizing
but it can be whatever.
Okay, okay.
2024 film
Alright,
made.
so the first thing that I really, really love is Domino Day, Lone Witch. I know
Mm,
that's a TV show on AMC, and it's a witch show, and it's about a black witch, and it's the first witch show I have seen that addresses the fact that quote unquote black magic generally is referring to something from African origins and has a lot of
yeah.
racism to it, and that what really is black magic is it like and there's a lot of reclaiming heritage there, and it's actually the white witches magic that is, you know, elitist and colonizing, and it really brings colonizing into that. um the other TV show I absolutely freaking love is Ghosts. um it's the American version of the UK one, and the reason is because even though it's silly, it's not heavy show. It's where like all of the everybody who's died on the property stays there and she can see them, but and it's very silly, but here's the cool
Mhm.
thing. There's everywhere she goes, she sees a Lenape ghost. Everywhere she goes, she has an interaction. It's usually comedic, but everywhere she goes, she sees a Lenape ghost because she's in the New York area. So it is the first show I've seen really bring to life, ha ha ha, even though it's death, bring to life the fact that there have been feet on this land before us everywhere we go. So when she goes to the office, there's a Lenape ghost, died there 600 years ago, you know, like, but I've never seen that before. Usually, when there is a Native American present in a show, they're like all by themselves. It's like one. You know, this is wherever she goes. There happens to be one, and they don't make a say about it. They don't. They don't spell it out. They don't. But it's very clear, and I really enjoyed that. I really like that. Really made me think more about the footsteps where I've been. I
I love
love
it.
a I love Discovery of Witches, even though that came out a long time ago. I love its resurgence. I love that Netflix put it up and everybody loves it so much because it is so queer in its
Yeah.
themes. It's the queerest
We're
themes.
covering that though for our Butu, right?
I
Yeah.
hope so. But
Yeah, we
by
are.
far the best thing is the Vampire Lestat, because
I love that show.
to
It's so
make
good.
Lewis Black changed
Yeah.
everything,
Interview with the
and
Vampire is the name of the show.
it
But yeah,
made everything make sense. It
yeah.
was what an
Hmm.
amazing.
And this, speaking of our HNAC test, this is an example of an HNAC test success in real life of Anne Rice realizing and growing as an author in person
Mm-hmm.
to bring in a diverse creative team that she was in support of and working with to change it to make it better and
Yep.
account for some of that stuff.
Nice.
And she passed away as the show was in production, but it was her intention and her working behind the scenes to make sure that this show could be modernized and diverse, including creative diversity in the writers and showrunners and all of that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I love that. Real life HNAC test passer. Uh,
Yeah.
Woo!
but what you're saying though, I buried the lead. So when we were talking about what we've been up to, I forgot to mention I saw the best movie of recent memory of the past few years this week, which is Sinners. If you can go out and see it, go out and see it. It's by Ryan Coogler, who
Know
directed.
somebody who also recommended that to me literally yesterday.
I mean, I also recommended to you all yesterday in the chat too,
No, I know,
but
but so
I'm
did
not saying
somebody
I
else
wasn't that
who's
person.
not a
Yes,
horror connection.
but this just fantastic. Directed by Ryan Coogler, who directed the Black Panther films, the first and second. And it's a horror movie that kind of features vampires in it a little bit, but as like the villain, but it's really a movie about the blues and like just it's just so beautiful and well done. And it specifically talks about how within blues music specifically, it can connect to past and present. And so what you were saying, Susanna, about Domino and seeing the whose feet have tread this land before, that is a very big theme in the film Sinners. So go out and see it. And when it's available on streaming, see it that way too. Uh, when it comes out on streaming, if you don't want to go out in theaters to see it. But it's just it's good. It's worth the hype it's getting. Um, so we're not talking about that movie though. We are talking about Wicked. So, what was your first time seeing Wicked, including not just the film, but also musical, book, any of the forms of Wicked?
Okay. I read Wicked, I think before I saw the musical, and definitely before the film. Um, but like forever ago, before college, I think. Um, I saw the musical for the first time the summer of 2008. So it was my last summer in college. I lived in New York City for the summer doing an internship at a church there, and my ex, who is not then my ex, came to visit me, and we actually ended up like kind of breaking up while they were visiting, but we went to see the movie, or the not the movie, the musical. We like paid full price to go see this musical, which is a whole other plan.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a complicated memory of it. But then I saw it, I think, twice with River, friend of the podcast, River, who will soon be on the podcast again, in Chicago during seminary. And we did that via lottery tickets. So if
Mm.
you are near any sort of theater stuff and you have not heard of lotteries, the Broadway especially does this, but like Chicago did it. Um, they specifically like try to make theater more accessible to people. And so you put your name in. A lot of times you have to go down in person, but they've done a lot more online lotteries, which are more complicated because more people enter them. But you put your name in, and if you win, you get up to 2 tickets, and you have to usually pay cash. But it was like $25 for front row tickets. You either get front row or you get on the side where it's slightly obstructed. Um, it's fantastic. I did that to see Book of Mormon. I did that for Fiddler on the Roof. So many different. Actually, no, I think my friend got me a ticket because he was in it. But um so many different musicals. Highly recommend going to see musicals that way. Um and then the first time I saw the film was actually for this episode,
Love it.
as per usual.
I read the book in college. I had heard about the musical before I read the book, but I did not read the book because of the musical. I read the book because I first read Gregory Maguire's Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister, and I absolutely loved that book. And I still think it's his best of the ones I've read, which admittedly I have not read too many of his books, but I really like Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. Um,
I
as a
think my
history nerd,
first
especially.
that was connected to him was the wolf. That was like in that genre was the one for the wolf.
Yeah. So if you are watching or listening to us and have no idea what Wicked is, just in brief, Gregory Maguire, who wrote the book, does a lot of these rewrites of fairy tales to from the villain's point of view or from a side character's point of view, and basically tells the story from their version as like a revisionist history, and it's really fun. Um, we're not going to talk about the book, just to be clear, too much in this because we do have a literature episode coming out at the end of the season where we'll talk about the book and some more which books then.
With
But
another special guest.
yes, yes. And so uh I that's how I read the book first. I saw the musical for the first time as a freshman in college, which was the year after it came out, but not live. I saw it the old-fashioned bootleg way of somebody took a VHS camcorder into a Broadway show and then released VHS recordings through the black market, quote unquote, or you can just buy off the street in New York if you ever visit New York at the time of the Broadway show. And so my friend had one of those, a Wicked bootleg with the original cast and stuff, and saw it that way. I was not that impressed, but also watching it a bootleg of a live show,
Impressive.
not really the full uh experience. But the music is catchy, so I did listen to like the music, the album and stuff, and the music's catchy. I did see it live for the first time in New York. Not actually what I was saying before the podcast. I um, misremembered. I was talking before a podcast about when I went to New York on my birthday with my ex-husband at the time. I thought I saw Wicked, but we saw something else then. I saw Wicked, I think, a year later as a birthday gift to him that I gave him when we went to New York, and I bought him tickets to see Wicked. So that's when I saw it for the first time. And while I was there, told everyone I brought a prop. One of the things I do whenever I see a Broadway show is I collect the collector's booklet of it, and so I have the Wicked collector's booklet of it, and it's just really fun. This is the 10th anniversary, 15th, 10th anniversary book of Broadway, because at that point I've been on for 10 years. So, and then I was also talking to Brian today, and I asked him when was the first time he saw Wicked, and he actually saw it live on Broadway with the original cast, which is impressive. My high school, living on the East Coast, my high school, I was in drama. So my high school did take a fall trip and a spring trip, our drama club, up to New York to see a Broadway show. And Wicked was not among the ones that I saw, but that's how I saw many a Broadway show, including Hairspray with the original cast, which was awesome. Uh, anyway, that's much longer than I wanted to talk about it. But anyway, Wicked, yes, I saw Wicked live in theaters. And then the film I wanted to see when it was in theaters, but I could not swing it because it was the holiday season. I was working at church, but I did end up seeing it when it was released on 4K. I bought the 4K disc the day of release and watched it that way and liked it. And so I've now watched it twice for the podcast. The second time, most recent time for the podcast.
Yeah.
So,
I had not seen any of it, read any of it, any of it.
Oh.
I mean, I heard the
were you?
music. I had heard the
Yeah,
music.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I'm sure
I
you
always,
probably have heard.
yeah, I love Broadway, so I've always been able to like find and listen to the music before I
Yeah.
had the ability to go see a show. You know, even though I'm on the East Coast, like that's just how money works in capitalism.
Yeah.
So I knew the music, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen or read the book yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to reread the book for our lit review, but we'll see if that happens. It might not.
I'm
I have a few that I want to try to read, but that's still a month out, so we have a little bit, well, 3 weeks out. I have a little bit of time. Anyway, when I do read, I read fast, but the problem is I just not been in a headspace to read lately. So anyway, talking about this movie, I will admit, I think I've said this on podcast before. Um, I was a theater queer, but not necessarily a musical queer, growing up. And so I still appreciate a musical, but I'm not, I do not love musicals in the way that many queers are stereotyped to love musicals. So yeah, um, this being a musical and this being particularly a musical that I find a little grating at times, the music of. It's interesting to me how much I enjoyed the movie when the stage show itself I do not enjoy as much as the typical queer I think would say they do. But anyway, a little bit behind the scenes for this. Um,
I
the
kind of
book,
think the movie is better,
yeah, agreed,
except that it's split into two parts. 'Cause I don't like when they do that.
fair. And I'll talk about that in the behind the scenes as well. So, book, as we said, was the original book that this was based on was a book by Gregory Maguire, who is a queer man. He writes a lot of these kind of he writes not just these stories, but he's most famous for these revisionist novels of popular fairy tales. Um, and so this book came out in 1995, and I almost said Stephen Sondheim. See, I'm not a good musical
I know
queer.
I was like,
Stephen Schwartz. Stephen Schwartz read the book when he was on vacation, I think a year after it came out, and fell in love with the book and immediately thought this would make a great musical. So he went to Gregory Maguire and wanted to buy the rights so he could produce it as a musical. The problem is Stephen Schwartz had already sold the rights to Universal to produce a film of it. So Stephen Schwartz, and there wasn't anything. The contracts had been signed. So as much as Gregory Maguire's like, yeah, I love this idea. Like Gregory Maguire couldn't negotiate that. So Stephen Schwartz had to go to Universal itself and pitch it as a musical. And Universal fell in love with the idea and they financed it through their theater arm. So they financed the original production of it on Broadway. And that's also why they have the rights to make this film version, which they did. Um,
interesting.
yeah, it was not when
Idea.
it was originally optioned as a film, it was going to be an adaptation of the book. I don't know how true to the book it would have been, but that was what the interest was. And there has been for a long time this interest in whether it's a miniseries or a film, more likely a miniseries to not take away from the theatrical success of the film, to do a closer adaptation to the book at some point, because the book and musical are very different. And we'll talk about that more in the retrospective than this. But so Stephen Schwartz, though, is well known for a lot of his other hit musicals, Godspell, Pippin, The Prince of Egypt, and Hunchback of Notre Dame. Both of those were started out as films, one by Disney, one by DreamWorks, retrospect. And then, but the stage production premiered first in San Francisco for a trial run, which is often a thing. Like shows that premiere on Broadway usually don't. They usually have a small kind of soft openings at another city to kind of do trial runs of it to get like idea to kind of like change it and adapt it based on like audience response and a little bit of what's working from a stage. Since it's a stage thing, it requires a little bit extra layer of editing that can only be done as it's being performed. So they usually have a limited run that way, and that happened in San Francisco. And then it premiered on Broadway in 2003 at the Gershwin Theater, where it's still held to this day. So it's still going on there, has been continuously held there. Uh, the original cast starred Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel as Glinda and Elphaba, respectively. They're still the most well known. If you listen to the broader recording, they're on the ones who sing it, and they also are the ones who they also have cameos in this film. Um, and this movie though has been in the works pretty much since the stage musical came out, because this stage musical was so buzzy. It won 3 Tonys for Outstanding Musical Lyrics and Book the year it came out, 7 Drama Desk Awards, and a Grammy for their cast recording. It, along with Phantom of the Opera and Lion King, are the only 3 Broadway shows to surpass $1 billion in revenue. And so this movie has been a moneymaker from the beginning. And so basically, Universal, since they own the rights to this film version still and had already put money into the musical, which they've received back in a, a lot of money, have wanted to turn it into a movie for a long time. But it was just kind of in development hell for a while until they could kind of find the right writer and team to kind of make it happen. And so it started to seriously pick up steam in 2016. It was scheduled to be released in 2015, but Universal was also doing another musical at the time, which was the film Cats with Taylor Swift and Jennifer Hudson and all that.
Bond?
Yes. And which bombed, famously bombed, infamously bombed, maybe. Um, and but Universal is like, we have these 2 movies. We want to, since they both are very expensive productions, movie versions of musicals are typically very, very expensive. So they're like, we don't want to be spending money on both of these. Which one should we put out first? And so they decided to focus on Cats. And so Cats came out in 2019, which put Wicked in the back burner.
Mhm.
Cats, as we know, did not land well. But Wicked was still like, they still believed in the project. It was just on the back burner, and it was scheduled for release in December 22nd, 2021, which meant that filming would have been happening in early 2020. But what happened in
Oh,
early 2020? Lockdowns from COVID. So that delayed filming significantly. When filming finally happened, it was scheduled to release on November 22nd, 2024, which is when it came out. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were announced to star in 2021. Um, I listened to the director's commentary in preparation for this version, and so some of my notes will reflect some of the stuff that the director
of
said.
course you did.
Yeah, one of the things he was saying though was specifically um, that finding the perfect casting for the roles of Glinda and Elphaba took a significant amount of time that they did not want to rush, and that delayed some of the process because they really wanted to make sure the casting was right. Originally, when it was announced, it was going to star Idina and Kristen, but by the time it finally started to be produced, they're like, I don't think either of these actors in their 50s can adequately portray uh, college age students anymore. So they chose, or maybe even younger. It's not quite clear if it's high school or college, like later high school years or
Yeah.
college or whatever that academy is, but some sort of academy. Um, but yeah, so that's why they decided to recast those characters. But they did, as I said, have a cameo in here, which I love their cameo. It was a well done cameo.
Yeah.
Uh, and so of course, a little bit of trivia. Gregory Maguire, just to say a little bit of his idea for it, is he really loved the original Wizard of Oz story and loved how much of it was kind of left out of the film that's very popular. So wanted to kind of like incorporate some of that. And he was also inspired by a real life church horror, not church horror, sorry, a real life horror story where a child killed another child. True crime story that happened in Britain. I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's just really disturbing. However, he was kind of inspired about that because of the way the news media was talking about it and was basically questioning the nature of evil. Children are supposed to be innocent, and yeah, if a child is intentionally killing another child, can we say that they're innocent? Are they born wicked? What does it mean to be born wicked? And suddenly that started to turn into this development of a book. Not which, to be clear, he's not comparing Elphaba to this real life case, but that's what started the thought of like, what does it mean to be wicked? Is the
Yeah.
way the news media was talking about this case.
Which is like how they start the movie.
Yes,
Like
with a
so
song
good. Yeah.
about is someone born wicked. Um,
Mhm.
Elphaba, the name is based on the name of the author of the original Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum. So Elphaba.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, as I said, differs quite a bit from the book. Mostly the music, just like in not saying what's different about it, especially for spoilers and stuff, reasons if you want to go back and read the book and you haven't yet. But basically, the musical, as musicals frequently, but not always do, made the book have a happier kind of ending than the book. The book has a sadder ending. And then also the book has inspired an entire franchise. There are two direct sequels to the book, and then there's a prequel, and all written by Gregory Maguire, and so it's kind of spawned a literary franchise of its own.
Mhm.
And then the last thing I'll say is that Gregory Maguire is queer. Stephen Schwartz is queer. Cynthia Erivo is queer. So there's a lot of queerness in this movie, and it shows, and it's intentional, and I really love that.
Same. I also love it. Also, the actor who plays Nissa for the movie is actually a wheelchair user,
Yeah,
and it shows like the her acting is so far superior and so much stronger
yeah,
than the countless number of people who don't use wheelchairs who I've seen act
and
as wheelchair users.
yeah, and John M. Chu. As I said, I listened to the director's commentary. One of the things that he says about that I'll bring up again as we in our walkthrough, but one of the things he says is that he thinks, to his knowledge, that that actor is the first wheelchair user to play Nissa ever in a major production of Wicked. And the
I think
which
that's
is
true.
yeah, and that actor is Marissa Bode, I believe, or Marissa Bodie. So
I just pulled it up. Oh, Marissa, yeah, I would say Bodhi,
okay,
but
Marissa
that's just
Bodie.
my guy
Yeah.
based on other people with that last name that I know. Yeah,
So,
Marissa Bodhi, spectacular.
do you have a one sentence summary for this film?
I do. Follow the yellow brick road to fascism.
Ah, true story.
Hmm.
Mine is Goth versus Prep, the musical.
How did you all come up with this? Honestly, like I could not come up with one. I guess I loved it so
That's
much.
okay.
I didn't have any snark available to me to dip into and pull out and
But you're Gen
throw at
X. I thought
people.
like Snark was your blood. That's saying a
I
lot if it's
well,
not coming out.
I am a Xennial, like with an X. Like we're the ones that are right in between X and millennial and like had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. Like came of
Hmm.
age with the internet. So like I don't know. I'm not quite as like I don't care as like those who
Yeah,
come before me,
fair.
but like I was a lesbian in the '90s. Like, hey,
Oh,
so you know
yeah. I love it.
it feels it just I was. I'm not gonna lie. I was having a bad spine day. I was very
Yeah.
high when I watched this.
I
Um,
think it's a good movie to watch for high,
it was
honestly.
perfect
Hmm.
high. It was well. I mean, I wasn't too high, but I was high enough, and it was to like really feel something, you know,
Yeah.
feel a lot. And so I didn't have enough snark to come up with a one sentence summary. I don't think it was
Fair.
like it is the space. Here's this. They perfectly encapsulated a space where where most marginalizations can come together and have coffee together.
I like it.
It's like the cafe of marginalizations. Like
Yeah.
I don't like to instead of having like an Olympics about like what's more important about color or queerness or ability or disability or you know like instead of comparing the different marginalizations which happens a lot, like this movie is a space where all of them can come together and discuss what they have, what the cishet white patriarchy wants from all of us, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it would be the place where all the marginalizations can find their unity as the resistance, I guess. You know, like it had something for everyone,
Yeah.
all of them.
It
So
does.
I know that's not a one sentence, but it reminded me of Lon
I understand.
Mabon. Do you know who Lon Mabon
Yeah.
is?
No.
So he's this complete fucking asshole, right? In Oregon, who spends his entire life writing ballot measures. That's all he
Oh,
does.
great.
All right. This is why you see Oregon have like in 2000 when Gore Bush had that going on. If it wouldn't have come down to Florida and the Chads, it would have come down to Oregon, and it was close between Bush and Gore in Oregon because Ralph Nader was out there with 10%, pulling away Gore's vote. Anyway, Lon Mabon had 27 ballot measures.
Oh.
And and this is before the VAN. And for those of you who don't know, the VAN is the Voter Action Network. It's mostly came of age with the Obama campaign, but it is a database that is it's the voter registration database of all the different states, constantly being updated and then modded basically with information from individual left-leaning groups. Well, before we had the VAN, Oregon did it themselves because Lon Mabon had something for everybody. He had something against reproductive rights. He had a ballot measure against queers. He had one against the environment. He had one against everything. And so usually everybody has one issue that really matters to them the most, but they'll still go out and protest for other issues. And in this case, it split us all up amongst our individual communities. And we were all like fighting for volunteers, fighting for money, because there was something that was attacking everybody. And then we came up with the voter file. And I was working with this like guy who was, this is really like 2000. We came up with an Access CSV voter file that we were constantly updating with information from everybody. So, for instance, if the environmentalists or say the queers, like there was something about trying to ban queer teachers. If somebody was against banning queer teachers, then they were probably pro-choice. It wasn't for sure, but it broke for us 3-1. And if it breaks for us 3-1, you don't have to double check. That means that you're good, right? So being able to share those information in one voter file, that's what this movie feels like to me. It
I love
feels
it.
like that voter file.
Getting to a deep dive already with Susanna, I love it. This is a very political movie, so I was expecting this to come. I enjoy it.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah. So one thing I did forget to mention in the deep dive, which I'll just say now, is that this movie is allegedly, or not allegedly, apparently controversial to Emily for being split into two. I forgot to mention why that was. And of course, big Hollywood studio making money is
It's
always
not at all
a
because Emily's
factor.
very, very impatient. Like one of the most impatient
However,
people I know, and it was like the second thing they told me about themselves. But okay.
however, it was chosen to be split into two because when a big budget Broadway musical is made into a film, Broadway musicals tend to be anywhere from 2.5 to 4 hours long.
Yeah.
A film audience typically will not sit for longer than 3 hours if it is a very compelling movie. And that's saying something. There are very few movies, not including like director's cuts and stuff, but very few movies that are go past 3 hours. Just because they like there's studies and studies upon studies about like how much people are willing to tolerate for a film. So it was decided early on in the
How much
production.
their bladders are willing to tolerate.
That's a big part of it too. And so the so early on in production, it was decided that what most Hollywood movies do is they just basically will cut out 2 or 3 musical numbers to condense the narrative. Because this is such an iconic and popular film,
How are you
the
going to
studio
make
was
a
like,
movie
we
that is
really can't afford to do that because people are expecting every single song in this. Every single song is so well loved. So they're like, well, we can't have a 4 hour long movie either. Let's put it into two parts. So each part is about 2.5 hours long. And so one came out this past November, and the next is coming out the next November. And so that is why it was split into two.
Mhm.
Primarily reason. Of course, money, like I said, in capitalism, it's not a question of was capitalism involved? Capitalism is involved in everything. It's the question of to what degree was capitalism influencing these decisions. But there was a legitimate reason beyond that as well.
Yeah.
For
I
the
actually like, for as much as I give it grief about that, most theater performances and musicals on Broadway have an intermission.
yes.
So like it makes sense.
Yeah.
I get it. And also, I'm impatient,
Yep. Yep.
as per Susanna's earlier statement. I like to tell people that patience is a virtue that I don't have.
Yes. But here's the thing. Wicked itself, if you go see it on Broadway, is about 3.5 hours long.
Hmm.
Combined, this movie's going to be 5 hours long. By splitting into two, it gave them a chance to expand upon the film, upon the musical, and go deeper into some parts and be more intentional about some
Yeah.
parts.
Which I think
That
they're doing well.
Yes. So John M. Chu, so I watched the director's commentary, and in our walkthrough, I'm going to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff he talked about some of the choices he made that I think are really well done in the film that were all intentional by him in adapting it for film. So
Mm. I
to
can't wait.
start, oh, go ahead.
I just said I can't wait. Also, I
Oh,
forgot to say during the background, whatever, um, shout out to Michelle Yeoh because she is wonderful
he
and
is.
absolutely fantastic.
She is fantastic, and she won her Academy Award in the film during the filming of this movie. And so they had an Academy Award party for her when she came in to film a certain scene, the
Oh,
dance hall scene, I believe it was, which is fitting. But she won her Academy Award for something we've covered in this podcast, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
which is fantastic. I need to watch that again.
Yeah. And she's been nominated for Academy Award, I think 3 or 4 times, and that was one she finally won.
Yeah.
So to start us off for this, uh, both in the book and in the musical, the animals are directly from L. Frank Baum. They were not played as much in the original Wizard of Oz movie, which is most well known.
Mhm.
But when adapting it for the stage, of course, there is a certain amount of makeup and willing suspension of disbelief that has to go into the characterization of animals so that animals are a lot more anthropomorphic in the stage version. So it was an intentional choice by John M. Chu because of it being a film is we can actually make them animals. So we just have like a bear and a goat and stuff. They're dressed oftentimes and stuff, but we just have animals in this film, which I love because in the musical, if you've seen it on Broadway, they are very suspiciously human-shaped animals that act and do human things.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Although they're still played by, actual humans.
well, they
Dr.
have voice actors for them, yes.
Peter Dinklage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Also, I just love the animals.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done, y'all.
Yep. And that was something that John M. Chu again commented on is he was saying that it was a very hard choice to on how to depict the animals for the film, but he ended up just going full on animals because he's like, we can do this, and the stage production can't, so we'll do it. Also in the opening song of asking whether or not someone is born wicked, they have a burning effigy of a witch, which I thought was interesting, especially as a horror podcast, because that burning effigy is so famous from a movie we've covered on this show before, on this
Mhm.
podcast before, Wicker Man.
Yeah. Yeah. When I saw your comment, Burning Man effigy, I was like, hey, I know that movie.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Something else as we go through is Elphaba's mysterious parentage. It's interesting because how they chose to play this on screen. The flashback, it actually shows Jeff Goldblum as the wizard dancing with the mom, but they have it shadowed so they can't tell to kind of keep it a mystery until part two. But yes, that is allegedly her parentage is that the wizard is her dad and who was having an illicit affair with the mom and was giving the
Get it
mom green elixir, which somehow explains her green color.
naturally or unnaturally.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then some more behind the scenes, as Emily already talked about with um, the character of Nissa being a wheelchair user, which is also in the stage production. When the stage production is usually someone who's not a wheelchair user playing a wheelchair user. Uh, but because of the actor Marissa being using needing a wheelchair for a mobility device, they that was an intentional part of everything from the costume design to the set decoration is how can we make all of Oz accessible, wheelchair accessible? And that also got them starting to think about not just wheelchair accessible, but if animals are a major character in this. How are things like a teapot accessible for a goat to pour in the tea scene since he
Mhm.
has hooves? And so it started the entire production really thinking about accessibility in this film, which goes so deep into like all aspects of production in a way that very few films have done.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that. And the delicate dynamics of that. I think this walkthrough is going to be a little bit deep. Uh we might get a little timey-wimey in here. But um part of what I really like about those accessibility pieces is also the ways that Elphaba is portrayed in relationship to particular accessibility and disability stuff,
mhm.
both in terms of sticking up for Nessa Rose and being like, she can do it. You don't have to push her. Like, don't do the things that she's telling you not to do. That is her wheelchair, her part of her body. Um, and then also with like Dr. Dillamond of like picking up the broken vase thing, right? That like n knowing because he like obviously is not able to do it. Um, but like doing it in a way that also still respects his like personhood.
Yeah.
Um, so I really love like the way that Alphabet in particular fits into those accessibility and disability pieces
Mhm.
and models for other t currently abled people what
Yeah.
better ways to engage with people with disabilities, disabled people.
Mhm.
So,
And
yeah.
this is also true in how Ryan Chu, the director, specifically sought the input of the actors playing the characters in the development of the characters and their costuming and their and stuff because he really wanted agency to be a major kind of point of this movie, which it is of the musical, but to be able to do this in a way unique to cinema versus stage production. So Cynthia Arifo, who played Elphaba, like was involved in all the aspects of her design, including like her costuming of saying in the Broadway, it's just this kind of generic black witch dress, which is designed to kind of look like the original, but it's like Cynthia Erivo is like, if Elphaba's a real person, what kind, if she wants to wear all black, great, but like, wouldn't she also have a fashion, wouldn't that be a fashion choice that she's making to, so that becomes like, how can we design these dresses to show her personality as opposed to just being this kind of like black dress of this is something that the character of Elphaba would choose to wear, not just something that is assumed onto the character.
Mhm.
So, a direct quote from Ryan as he was talking about this is it's not just icon for the fairy tale, but it's actually person of the
Mhm.
character.
Mhm.
Um, then the dance scene, Ryan had this beautiful description of what this scene meant for him as the director and also for the character of Elphaba, and especially as Cynthia was playing her, which it does
Is
have
it
this
Ryan
real,
or John? Who's
what have I been saying?
Ryan?
Why have I saying Ryan? You're John. Yes, I don't know where Ryan got into my head. Thank you.
I just was like,
John M. Chu. John M. Chu. I
I
think I
feel
made this
like,
mistake
yeah.
because of so it's because of watching Sinners with Ryan Coogler and talk about
Mm.
that director nonstop the past few days that like Ryan's in my head. So my apologies. Yes, but J John Chu. So John was talking about this the dance scene, and he said that in this moment Elphaba is making space for herself, even if it's humiliating and hard. She just knows she needs to do it.
Which is like so good. Like that takes, as they say, rock hard mahogany ovaries. Um, it takes guts and it takes courage, and like there is so much about Elphaba that is so fierce. And I think a lot of the times when people are so fierce, particularly in their care for others, we don't always get that in their care for themselves, but like that dancing and taking up space specifically to dance because she knows she just needs to do it is fierce care and fierce gentleness
Mhm.
for herself, right? Like it is fierce of like, come at me, but like the way she does it is just so gentle and in her own body and her own space.
Yeah,
And I love it.
for sure. And I it's also interesting because this moment says something about the character of Glinda or Galinda as she is at this point, as well. In that she chooses, so this is a good picture of uh Elphaba standing up for herself, and then also a good picture of allyship as uh Glinda just kind of joins in and participates even at great risk to herself and her popularity, but by doing so is able to kind of bring the crowd around.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
like that is, I don't know, spoilers, but that's also like her repairing some of the harm that she did by intentionally giving Elphaba a hat that to make her look weird to everybody else and get made fun of.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Um, this goes right then basically into the scene popular, which
good. Yeah.
another behind the scenes trivia from the commentary. John, I remembered, it says that that was the first musical number they filmed was popular because spoilers for those of you who do not. I think this surprised Emily when we've talked about this before on the podcast. Movies are not always filmed in sequential order. So
Knew that. I feel like I
so
knew
yeah, we talked about all the podcasts before, and I remember maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was Susanna. Somebody was surprised that movies are not necessarily filmed in sequential order. So sometimes they film the ending first, or it goes based on set and production and what's available when and that kind of thing. Um, so they filmed Popular first, and so that was kind of like a big question of how are Cynthia and Ariana Grande going to do these iconic characters in their first song number? How are they going to be able to make it their own while also paying homage to the original since Popular is a particularly popular song, pun
that.
intended, of the musical. And I will say, when I saw that, when I heard that in the director's commentary, suddenly it clicked into place because the first time I watched it, I'm like, Popular kind of stands out as a sore thumb in this adaptation as being the most similar to the Broadway cast recording in how it's sung. And
Which makes
now that
sense if
makes
it
me,
was the first one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
Nice.
the rest of them, I think they do a very good job of making it their own, but Popular just, it feels like it hits all the beats that it hits in the musical in the exact same ways. So,
Hmm. Interesting.
yeah. Um, then we get to the cameos of Idina and Kristen as they're playing their kind of Ozian counterparts, telling the history of Oz and about the two witches who had some great power and left behind this mysterious book, the Grimoire. So
Hmm.
I like that. That was a good role for them. And I also loved how, particularly in the filming of it, how each of them got their own moment. So Kristen took Ariana's side and kind of had a little moment with her, and Idina took Cynthia's side. So it was kind of like this full circle moment that was really well done, I thought.
And
And not
Idina
too,
Menzel got her like long
yeah,
extended high note.
yep.
Hmm.
And I think it's fan service that isn't obnoxious fan service.
Yeah.
So I like that. It was a good way to bring them into the role in a way that made sense for the movie without it like being like, oh, here's Idina and
Yeah.
Kristen
Well,
Chenoweth.
it reminds me of the 2016 Ghostbusters movie where
Yeah.
they have like the cameos from the three men who were the original Ghostbusters, one of whom
Mhm.
is a cameo in uh picture form. Um
Foreman.
that are four, yeah. Sorry, I don't know how to count. Um but that all of the cameos are not as themselves
Yeah,
necessarily,
yeah.
but they do come in to like affirm and value the movie and the work.
And Janine did that as well, and Sigourney
Yeah.
Weaver too. They all had cameos. It was really
Okay, yeah.
that was good.
I couldn't remember who all did. I just remember like those guys.
Uh, there's a lot of things I was like, I thought I was going to talk about this, but I think it's in the deep dive. So, the last thing I want to say about this, and to kind of transition to a deep dive, which we've already kind of been doing, so not even serving that purpose, but John said, now I have to be intentional about it as I say John each time because I still want to say Ryan. John said, that movie one, the theme, if he had to name a theme for each movie, the first movie would be possibility and choices. Movie two, consequences. Consequences of those choices.
Hmm. We always talk about the consequences of our actions.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh-huh. Interesting. I think that works really well. I probably need to see the movie again, but um oh, sorry. I'm not tired. Um I do I do think the way, and you have it later, so we can just jump around, but the like I don't see color comment from I think Bowen Yang's character Fanny, or was it Glinda? I don't remember who, but it was one of the popular ones, right? Who was like, I don't see color, which is factually untrue. Um,
Hmm.
but I like part of what I mean it trips and has all of the lines of like casual white microaggressions. I don't see color, like all of that stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I love the like Elphaba's clarity and truth, while everyone else is just weird. Right? Like she sees things and names things as they actually are, and everybody else has this whole charade that they are doing. And I was just like, this is Autism 101. Like,
Right.
this is the thing. I don't understand why all the rest of you are being so weird and doing it does not make sense So, yeah, I really love.
That's what I mean about where it's all the place. It's all these. It's the places where all the marginalizations meet. Like that. That is a place where neurodivergence and I would say I'm guessing from things that I've like conversations I've had with my friends who have been people of color, like when they look at some of the things that happen in white culture, and they're just like, what, like this, like, and also where queerness and sometimes I think gender also fits in, where there's just this like alienness. You know, like I think I think there's a high amount of diagnosed autism amongst queer people because we're so introspective because we've had to be to survive all of the gaslighting. But I think that that is true of most like highly marginalized communities that have access to care or have some parts of their people of their community that have access to care. And like I think that what you're talking about right there, that's what I mean. It's the place where all the different marginalizations can find something in common or find an experience that's in common without it becoming an Olympics, the like the oppression Olympics, that for lack of a better word, and without it becoming a trauma collision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it I find that to be incredibly beautifully crafted to find those spaces where you know we're different, like everybody can say yeah I relate to that without it becoming where we're without us being pitted against each other. And that's a gift. That's a real talent and a gift.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that that the book and original stage production are both by queer people, and
Mm-hmm.
then having a Black woman play Elphaba and an Asian man direct the film have all been able to like take it various levels and bring various intersectionalities in it. And I think it's especially good with the film, and we'll talk about this later because Emily and I think share our opinion of this, and we'll talk about this in our rating. But I think the movie does some things that the musical not necessarily couldn't in a bad way, but just couldn't because of it being a stage production, but also the diversity of the creative people behind the film were able to bring in a lot of that stuff more explicitly and more uh not necessarily intentionally. Always been intentional, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like more nuanced is the word I'm looking for. More nuanced than is necessarily in the book or the original musical. And so propaganda and racism is something that I had marked in here, kind of tied into all this, is that the right off the bat, we have these very clear propaganda posters of showing Alphaba, these very caricatures of Alphaba being this very ugly, quote unquote, version of the witch, as is the Margaret Hamilton version of The Wizard of Oz, as these propaganda posters talk about her being evil. And that is a significant part of the book and the musical that, but the movie is able to show it much more clearly than the musical is able to do, of like the wizard starts a propaganda machine against Alphabet, and we see the end result here in the opening scene, and we see the beginning of it in the closing scene of this movie. And then also how racism is told not just in Elphaba's green skin color and the very Semitic characterizations of the propaganda poster against her, and the way that Margaret Hamilton was also, which is, as we've talked about all along the season, are kind of tied in with this very anti-Semitic portrayal of
Mhm.
stuff. So that's all part of it. And then also the way the animals are kind of treated as this, yes, as a separate race, but like in a very allegorical way for race relations in this country and in the West in general. Uh, so like all of that stuff's kind of coming into play here, and it's going to be even much more apparent in the second film. So I'm excited for that one to come out to talk about this stuff even more so, continue the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I am excited for that as well. And I do think like it's been forever since I read the book. And so I'll be interested to hear what you think if you read it um before the lit retrospective, but like it does I do like, and that's part of why I like the movie maybe better than the musical.
Spoilers. We're not through rating yet. I'm kidding.
I'm not rating. I'm just saying better. Um because there is that greater space to get into the all the nooks and crannies of it and not just kind of a broader strokes
Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
Because we're Horners at the church, I have to bring up things that are sacramental theology whenever I see them. Water is a very big theme in this movie, and it's a theme in the original musical and the original Wizard of Oz. Like, it's always been a prominent part of water is somehow bad for witches, and where that rumor comes from is if witches are either Jewish or have sold their soul to Satan, whichever origin story, gross origin story we're doing,
Oh,
they will be allergic to baptismal holy water. And so that is why
what?
water can kill them.
God,
And
I
no.
did.
so
How did I not?
Oh my
What?
God.
I feel like we've okay. Um
So
I
it's
was about
like
to say, I think we
vampire
talked
holy
about this
water?
in the original Wizard of
It's the
Oz. I love
it's
that
like
we're
the whole wait, is
re-remembering
it
That
it.
so
was
it
like 50 years ago.
True. What were you gonna say, Susanna? Sorry.
this is like the witch's version of holy water and vampires?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
So,
I hate us sometimes. I really
right.
do.
So,
Oh God.
water. So that part wasn't necessarily commented on this movie, but John was talking about how water was a very intentional running, not pun intended there, but hey, pun there, a running theme of water throughout the movie, and how it can be a weapon or how it can also represent renewal and rebirth. And of course, how baptism is both. Baptism represents a death to drowning and a renewal and rebirth. And so, how that's very baptismal energy going
Yeah.
on there.
I saw your comment on water and I was like, yeah, like death with Christ and then resurrection with Christ. That was before the like Jewish, the anti-Semitic like
Hmm.
origin stories. I
Yeah,
just missed that. I'm sure that we talked about it in the Wizard of Oz version, but
it's been a long 9 months or however long it's been.
as they say, it's been a minute.
Yeah. Something else very theological that I noted here and again was brought up in the commentary. So I'm glad I watched the commentary because it gave some of these insights and realizing how intentional this was. Is so the this part he didn't say, but I find it interesting that the movie begins with Glinda descending and the movie ends with Elphaba ascending. So Glinda
Uh,
descends in her little pink mechanical bubble.
uh-huh.
And then Elphaba flies using magic of her own power and agency at the end.
Oh.
So that being part of it, but also very intentionally by the director, this even appears in cinematography itself of he frequently will have a low shot. So if we rewatch it, so I'm interested if you see it. I
Yeah.
That's all I could see
No,
after hearing.
there's like stuff in my head now remembering that.
Yeah, so I'll start the camera low and then kind of pan up
Hmm.
frequently in this movie. And then even in the final act, Glinda and Elphaba have to ascend this giant tower in a hot air balloon before she can even ascend on the broom. And so just this reoccurring theme of ascension over and
Yeah.
over and over.
Which is interesting because there's also so much movement because it's a musical and musicals have musical numbers and you're moving a lot. But like thinking about the library when
Yeah.
Fiyero gets to the library and is like, and they're like turning the things on like hamster wheel bookshelves and stuff. But like, yeah, I do need to watch this again.
Also, trivia, which I found fascinating, kind of hopping back to behind the scenes, is very little of this movie was CGI, believe it or not. So much of it was practical effects. So much of it was like real, like the train was real. I thought the train was CGI watching it, but the train was real. Some of the stuff was augmented with a little bit of CGI, but
Mhm.
like by and large, a lot of the sets and everything, even the giant pan up of all the poppy flowers, he said they literally planted like something like I think he said 2 million poppies or something on this giant field for that scene. So it's like I was
I
impressed by
know.
how much practical stuff they did for this.
Well,
There's
and
still obviously a lot of CGI, like her flying around
yeah,
on broom and stuff wasn't real, and the animals weren't real animals, but just a
yeah.
lot of it was a surprising amount was
But I
practical.
love that because we've talked about on the podcast for a variety of different movies that like there I love that. I think we're coming back down from it, but there was this like as CGI really started to become so much more regular, there was this wave of like everything is CGI. And now we're like coming back to actually practical effects are really effective in
Yeah.
ways that CGI isn't always. And like thinking about like Baby Yoda is
Mhm.
adorable because it's an actual puppet, not
Yeah.
because it's a CGI, right?
And
But like those sorts of things.
sadly, I think one franchise that needs to return to its roots there is Marvel. The Marvel Cinematic Universe still, they're just so plasticky to me. I can't watch them anymore. Like in COVID, they kept the Marvel machine running and producing movies, which meant they all did them on sound stages instead of on location. And that just meant they did entire movies of CGI with just actors like composited into it. And I'm just like, it just does not look good, and they haven't come back from that yet. So I hope they do.
Yeah.
Star Wars at least has with the Mandalorian and stuff, as they're saying. I'm glad for that. Also, something I noticed was this theme of magic and surrender and faith. So faith in this understanding of magic and who has magic and who doesn't, who is thought to have magic. It's really confusing. There are only two characters in this movie that have magic. Those characters are Madam, what is her?
Cool.
Yes. Uh, and then Elphaba, like the headmistress and Elphaba, the only two
Yeah.
characters that have magic.
Mad,
Glinda does
which
not
is
have,
interesting because they're both also women of color.
yes, yeah. And it is explicitly said by the director. I don't know if this might be lore from the book. I have not read the book in like,
I
I
mean,
don't want to say how long. It's been a minute, almost 2 decades. Jesus Christ, I'm old. So, but I think that's probably true in the book. I don't know. It's not explicitly said in the musical, but according to John and Chu, the director, only women in this universe can have magic. So the wizard can't even have magic and yet has somehow duped everyone into thinking he does. Um, but it's not actually possible for him to have magic in this universe. And even then, it's a very rare thing that only two women in the entire movie have magic. Um, then so this theme of magic, who really has it,
okay, but
who authentically has
question,
magic? Yes.
do the animals have magic?
It depends on how you define magic.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can talk about this in which lore. I'm interested by this. I need to think about this for a minute. Only two of the human characters have magic. I'll say that for now. Kind of goes back to our question of do droids have the Force in Star Wars? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
We all know how I felt about that.
me
So,
too. We are in agreement on that one.
hashtag
Um,
all droids go to heaven.
yes, yes, for sure. Uh, there's this, but also there's this theme of magic is this internal thing that, and this is where the queer metaphor becomes very apparent and very intentionally apparent of magic is this internal powerful thing that you initially might fear within yourself, but then as you surrender to it and you can become and you can embrace it, then you can live your fullest life. You can ascend, you can defy
Mhm.
gravity, you can notice that change within you, can look to the western sky.
Yeah, all of the things. Well, and
Yeah.
I think that it is a queer allegory in this sense. I think it also is very trans,
Yes.
and thinking particularly I mean, this is a decided content notification for trans people today. Um, and um, I think like the the pressure right now for those of us who are trans to detransition or to
Mhm.
go back underground is so high politically, and not just in the US, right? Like thinking about um the ruling in the UK that was basically bankrolled by a certain horrid author. Um, that like the ways we are in danger if we are
Mhm.
noticed, but
Yeah.
also like detransitioning goes against medical advice.
Yeah. And the
Uh,
fact that Alphaba is when read as trans, and I think this is a very valid reason. That's why even in the beginning I said that to me this is a very trans film too, is because for me what's powerful about this is I am a trans woman that does not pass as a woman. Alphaba cannot pass as the gender assumption of what woman is in Oz because of her skin. No amount of hiding that can pass to the
yeah.
point where the wizard even offers her the ability to pass, which she doesn't actually have, so it's an empty promise, but offers her that, and she denies it twice at that
Even
point.
though she had like dreamt about it and fantasized
Yes.
about it, right? And I think I mean, yeah, I think that is so much of it reminds me of Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman, right?
Hmm.
The like, how are we defining who is human? And so frequently we define it by cis het white man of a certain age and wealth and property ownership and all of those and ability and all of those things that like nobody really totally is, but also like the the nobody like going back
Yeah.
is not going back only causes harm,
Yeah.
and going forward probably causes harm, right? Like
Yeah.
you we're stuck.
And
We're stuck in a space and I can't get a passport and
yeah.
right like I can't change the things without changing the things, which
Yeah.
is not like
And,
all
and
of
it's
those things.
and to be very clear for cis straight listeners, and well, for cis listeners, period, regardless of whether you're straight or not, is well, two things about that. One is this is a very intentional erasure and limbo that trans people are being put into as a way to deny us of right. You can't, and some of these are active attacks, open attacks on rights, and others are ways to basically legislate us out of existence. So we can't even legislate ourselves. We can't even get our gender markers changed to what's on our birth certificate if it's been changed because they've no longer allowed that. So you can't even be the gender you're assigned at birth, even though that's what they're saying you are. They're not letting you do that either. So it's like there's this, and that brings me to a second point, which is also you mentioned going back, it will cause harm if it's even a viable choice. And it might just not be a choice. So some people
Yeah.
might not even have that ability to go in any, whatever back may mean, the variety of definitions of that, to go backwards. It just, you might not be able to do that um, for any number of reasons, from financial to physical changes to anything like that. There's just so much. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Uh, and this also, the last thing about this kind of magic and surrender and faith, all that stuff that I'll say is the nature of evil is it brought on by the very first song. And because we don't have the second part of the movie yet, it really comes to a head in the second part. But what is the nature of evil? Is someone born wicked, or is wickedness thrust upon her? That's kind of the central question and theme of this. And then I have one last thing for deep dive, which is also kind of tied to all this, which is this need to prove yourself. And this is something that the director, John, said again and again as he was commenting on the film. One of the things one of Elphaba's journeys in this is she goes from thinking she needs approval to questioning whether others are even worthy of having a say on whether or not they can approve her. And so who is giving you approval, and are they even worthy of giving you approval?
Mhm.
And who are you trying to seek approval from?
Which is one of my favorite, one of the other quote, like the other quote that big quote that I wrote down was Alphabet to the wizard. You have no real power, wizard. Correct.
Yeah.
Right? Like that moment of recognition and clarity for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like a certain fascist in office today who has no real power,
Except for
and
this.
yet is being assumed to have power, and people aren't standing against it or fighting against it. I should say standing against it, especially in covering this movie, but fighting against it
Mhm.
because he doesn't have the power. The only reason he's getting away with it is because people are letting him.
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I wish I was a
I tried to
musical
look it up,
theater
but I
queer to help.
couldn't.
Ah, yeah. And I want to be, and so this, we can get into a debate because Suzanne and I have talked about this before, and I think we have different ways we approach intentionality in film, or in media and text in general. And so, like, I'm of the theory that the author is dead, so it doesn't necessarily matter what the intention is. And I don't want to get into this debate here because this could be another hour or two. However, I will say Moulin Rouge says a lot about a lot. Whether or not it's intentional, it's still saying it. And whereas with Wicked, it is very intentionally meant to be an allegory, which that allegory is stated to not necessarily be there in Moulin Rouge, but it still is. There's still a lot of allegory in that movie. I love it. Yes. Mhm. Well, yeah, I was I was picking and choosing like what of the immense amount of background I could do for this because I could have done a whole episode just on background for this movie. One of the things I did not talk about, but is so relevant to what you're saying right now, is that there was a controversy when this film hit theaters among a certain
Wait, is this like,
demographic.
uh,
Basically, basically white conservative women who took a musical theater class and fell in love with the musical, but never actually spent a second thinking about what it meant, aside from
Mhm.
just, oh, these songs are pretty and cool. Saw the movie, yeah, saw the movie and were like, why are you making all this about politics? Why are you suddenly pretending that the wizard is Donald Trump? It's like you are reading that.
Always been there.
You are reading that. You're
Yeah,
reading the
yeah,
wizard as Donald Trump. They
yeah,
are not saying the wizard is Donald Trump. You're reading that. So that means you recognize that, first of all. And secondly, it's always been there. It's always
yeah.
been there.
Yep.
So I'm
It has
glad you're
always
finally catching up to
been
the rest of the
the
world
yellow
there.
brick road to fascism. Brick road to fascism.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
Hmm.
Hmm. And a particular identity that's a scapegoat too. Mhm. Yeah. And you, yeah, yeah. And to be clear, and to be clear, I know you are not saying this, but if a listener has not seen that, when Susanna says we, she is talking about the Democratic Party. She's not talking about those of us for whom our identities cannot be ignored, or those of us who are constantly living in a reminder of our identity. It is just it's just the assumptions that the party as a whole has about identity politics. And part that was one of the things the original commentator was saying. It's like you can't ignore something that exists. It exists. It's just and going pretending it doesn't exist doesn't help anybody. Yeah, yeah. Right. And again, yeah, yeah. And there are, of course, many uh Democrats who do embrace it in a good way. It's just as a whole, the party is really bad at this. And as a whole, a lot of organizing communities that are fronted by white people are really bad about this. Or you could do it, yeah, with a room. But with the room, what this is one of the issues with this being split into two parts is with the room to also say that even in this big ASEAN future, where Alphabet ends this movie super empowered, trying to do the right thing, she still caused harm to the monkeys, not trying to. And the second movie really examines the ways in which she messes up too. It's not just the wizard. And so it's like the ways that even when we try to do our best, we still fail. And as long as we are open to being challenged in our failures, that is kind of the track to run on as opposed to this, oh, ignoring it or pretending it didn't happen or just turning someone into a pure virtuous social justice warrior. It's like
Which is,
nobody
but I
vacate.
think I do think that like the first movie sets her up that way
Yeah.
in a way that's really helpful and challenging
Hmm. Hmm. But even
because
so, like there are
like
places where she messes up in this and she takes accountability for it. And that's one of the things that is reoccurring. Well, we're not going to do
yeah,
our HNAC test on alpha necessarily this. Well, we might. I don't know. We'll see what Emily wants to do for our HNAC test. But
yeah,
already we are starting to see Alphaba treating the places where she messes up in potentially healthier ways than some of the other characters, um, and acknowledging that she messes up. So one last thing for deep dive that I want to quick say is the story is a story of a loss of innocence on so many different levels. on the level of the original book and now this musical and this movie of letting go of the story of Wizard of Oz as it was told in the original film and kind of growing up to see, oh, this fairy tale world where good and evil are these strict dichotomies, and good witches are pretty and evil witches are ugly, according to Glinda in the original Wizard of Oz film. Um, there's kind of a growing past that and the loss of innocence of this black and white world to realizing the world is much more complex than that. Uh, and then that also is about Elphaba's expectations about life, Glinda's expectations about life. Even Glinda, she's a popular girl. You think she's getting everything she wants, and yet she's not able to get the approval of the teacher who she wants to get approval of, but she
Mhm.
can get everything else she wants. So it's like she's growing, even she is kind of on this journey of like, wait, life isn't playing out the way I expect it to either, even though I'm used to it having done so historically for me. And then, of course, the metaphor of the wizard, that which is from the original story itself of there is a man behind the curtain. The wizard isn't the loss of innocence is when you realize that the wizard is not this all-powerful being, but just this little man using technology, this little incel man to use technology, like to go to space in a penis-shaped rocket like Jeffrey Bezos or something. So, or in a hot air balloon,
Right.
as it were.
The hot air balloon is the penis rocket. Oh my
Mhm,
god.
mhm.
I'm tapped.
Yeah.
You can preach. I
Oh,
meant
thank you.
it. I absolutely meant it. Mm-mm.
Well, this movie can preach, so that helps. The
Well,
movie's already happened.
you're just a really good preacher of allegory.
Oh,
You
thank you.
really, really are. Really
It's the queer in me.
good.
It can't.
It's also
And
the
one of the things
pace in
we're
you,
not even.
Walker.
Oh, thank you. One of the things we're not even talking about in this movie, but we've talked about earlier this season.
Oh
But
my
this
god, does
movie,
that. Wait, wait, wait. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to know. Does that mean that Emily and I can call you the doctor now?
you can call me the doctor.
Yes! Mind blown, right, Emily? As the
I can't
doctor
travel in time
says.
and space except when I'm very high, but it's a little bit different than traveling with TARDIS. Although it is kind of similar to going through the time vortex, but
A
that's
little
neither here
bit.
nor there. Um,
I'm sorry. Continue gaily forward. I
thank
apologize.
you. No, I love it. Thank you. That's fun. Um, well, I was trying to remember what I was gonna say there. Um, oh, so this movie, like I was kind of saying, this movie can preach, but also one of the things we were talking about in the original Wizard of Oz, so go back and listen to that, but we didn't have time to get into because this episode is already super long in the best way. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just saying it's already long. Is we talked about camp and excess and how that's part of the queerness of the original film. And so this movie also uses camp and excess in very intentional ways. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can go back and listen to The Wizard of Oz, uh, which is
Yeah.
kind of the masterclass for how to use camp and excess to make statements and to queer things.
Hmm.
Any other deep dive, or can we move into witch lore?
I think we're good for witch lore.
I had a deep dive, but it's about the rating. So I'll wait till then. Just don't let me
Okay,
forget because I'm super
yeah.
ADHD and my meds are long gone by
I'll
now.
do my best. I'll do my best. I also am super ADHD. And it's late at night, so my ADHD is even worse. It's almost 11 for me, almost midnight for y'all. Excuse me.
Yeah, my meds
So,
are done and my brain is pew 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 pew, just like yours. Pew pew. I feel like this
Lindsay,
podcast, when it's really late, is me and Pace going pew 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 pew, and Emily being like ah.
I'm just
I
going to
I
fold
just do like the
origami or
doodles to
doodle.
like ground
Yep.
myself between all the ping pong.
Yeah, or origami earlier in the season.
Yes.
So, or witch lore. I'll start off because this is also how we rate the film. This movie does have a magic book, and it's called a grimoire, which is intentionally meant to be a play on grimoire, which is the real term we've talked about earlier in the season. And apparently, in this, two ancient witches with magic either could read the book or wrote the book. That's not entirely clear, but they prophesied that one to come will be able to read the book, and no one will be able to read the book until that person to come. Yes. And just a fun piece of trivia here from the original Wicked book is it's not explicitly said here in the book, but is strongly hinted that the reason no one can read the book in Oz is because the book is written in English and they are all in another dimension where English is not the language they can read. That's clearly not the case in the Wicked the musical version because she's like it's the script is all made up and it's a beautiful like scripted book and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, at least, that's the implication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book is just mm-hmm. Yep, and then magic is very connected to strong emotions and like feeling powerless,
Yeah.
particularly when it's untrained, right? But
Yeah.
just Elphaba's initial.
So, Susanna, you said that Wicked isn't just Mean Girls. Wicked isn't just Matilda. It kind of is Matilda, though. Her mental powers are connected. So now I'm
I
getting
mean,
your
no, I
argument
didn't
even
say
more about
Matilda.
about Matilda being a witch.
Oh, I didn't say
Even
Matilda. I said Mean Girl.
oh no,
No,
I know
yeah,
you did. I'm
but
saying
Okay.
Matilda.
Okay, yeah,
I'm
I
saying
mean, maybe
Matilda because
Matilda.
it's basically telling that story too.
It kind of
Um,
is, yeah. I see that. I see
so
that. But I
more
could,
credence to Emily's theory that Matilda is a witch movie.
but like, my mind is blown thinking about. Okay, honestly, I'm thinking about the blonde white musical theater majors at Valparaiso, where I went
Hmm.
to college, who were literally just there to get a husband. I am quoting.
Yep.
you mean to get their MRS.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to tell a real life church horror story related to this,
And
Susanna.
see, okay, but basically that they would have seen this, they would have seen the musical as Wizard of Oz meets Mean Girls.
Yep. Yep.
They would not have seen it as marginalizations and issues of justice, and yeah, and it blew my mind when you said it. Blew my mind.
Yeah. So my real life church horror story exactly related to what you're saying about like the white blonde conservative theater majors at Valparaiso. Although this wasn't Valparaiso, this was a different university that a family member of mine went to. And so I'm not going to say who in this particular because they'll give too much information. I don't have permission to share details of the story. But I was watching a performance that one of my family members was in, a musical performance. This family member was a music major, and one of and it was one of those performances like earlier on in a college career before it gets to your final performance where it's just a solo. This is one where they grouped different performers to do like mini performances together into one concert. So the another girl who or young woman I should say in this program was a voice major, a soprano, and she chose to perform the song for good as part of her little uh recital. And I knew through this family member and through my own encounters with this person that this person was very queer phobic and very Christian fundamentalist. And they, no joke, straight up stood on that stage singing with a straight face and no awareness with another musical theater person. The lyrics for Good, which is the most fucking sapphic song ever. It is literally about these two women saying that their lives have been fundamentally changed because of their love for
Mm-hmm.
each other. And this
Mm-hmm.
queer phobic girl is singing it without any awareness that that's what that song is about, with a complete straight face.
Ah!
And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you don't have you thought about these lyrics for like 1 second? Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun. But they're roommates. Okay.
Roommates! I mean, the roommates loathing song is the most sapphic thing I had seen on TV in a
Right?
very long time. Like, I mean, the amount of people that like I I have definitely experienced people who I thought hated me. No, no, no. They did not. But like in college anyway, when I was, yeah, that they thought they hated me. They did not hate me. There was a totally different
Mhm.
thing once they delved deep enough. Yeah. Wow. Loathing. Yeah.
Uh, this, so this is the reason. This
Getting
is the
challenged is
reason.
a turn on, and everybody that
Yeah,
and in queer world, like we, that's another thing that I
There's a
love about
reason
queer
that
world.
it's thirsty sword lesbians.
yeah.
Right,
I
exactly.
haven't.
Like getting challenged is a turn on, and queer people
Yeah,
acknowledge that, and they acknowledge the turn on that getting challenged is. And
I
you're smiling, and there's so many stories.
I have an
Which one? You
anecdote
gotta give
that
me one.
I want so badly to tell, but
Give
it's
me
going
them
to need to be a
all.
Patreon. It's going to be a need to be a Patreon anecdote. But I'm going
No,
to tell Susanna and Emily off air because I can't sit on this any longer.
Wahaha.
There's an
tidbit,
anecdote, and
tidbit. Give
so
me.
this is for why you all need to be Patreon supporters, so you can hear the anecdote that I want to tell about this same musical theater young woman who sang this song that is just so hilarious in a church horror way. But I need to restrain myself for the end of this episode. But don't worry, Susanna, Emily, you'll hear it soon. Um, and Patreon supporters, you can hear it then. Uh, so, also connected to magic in our witch lore, going back to that, ADHD, see? Um, Magic doesn't work in the way Elphaba expects it to, even when she is more able to get in touch with her emotions. When she reads from the book expecting to be able to enchant herself to give herself wings or to make herself fly, she actually doesn't. She enchants the broom. And so she still claims that, but even in her more intentional use of magic and claiming that power, it still doesn't work the way she expects it to. So magic remains this kind of mysterious force that kind of isn't able to fully be bent to the will of the user. Um, and that brings us to what we promised we talked about earlier is are do animals have magic in this? Or is it hinted at? Is it shown directly? What are our thoughts on magic and animals here?
Okay. I think that there's an argument to be made for animals are magic because there are some animals that don't talk, and there are other animals that do talk. And there is a phenomenon that happens where animals lose the ability to talk. And that to me is connected to magic. Partly, as we talked about in Kiki's delivery service, right?
Yeah,
Magic
Patreon
is,
again.
yes, our movie commentary that we just recorded. Um, but losing your magic can happen.
Mm-hmm.
There are fluctuations in magic, that sort of thing. And the way that different people respond to oppression is different.
Mhm.
So some people respond to oppression, like Matilda, and it funnels into greater magic. And I
Or
think
Alphabet
other
in this too.
people, it like it can strip it away.
Yeah.
Um,
Kiki's Delivery Service is a great movie to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. Listen to that on Patreon. We talk about that.
yeah. So I think that that talking animals are magic. And
Yeah.
part of the way fascism works is it gets rid of magic.
And I almost said something here when I was thinking about it, but I think I'm actually conflating this with another movie we covered earlier this season, which is Bedknobs and Broomsticks. In my mind, I was thinking that the animals were given the ability to speak through the magic of the original two witches in this movie. But I don't think that's the case. I think that's the backstory of why the animals could talk on the island of Nabumbu in with Bedknobs and Broomsticks. But I don't think that's like explicitly said here. I think that it just makes it even more mysterious as an accepted part of this world that some animals can speak and some can't. And that adds additional credence to animals having their own magic as opposed to just being magic given to them by a human, as is in the case of Ben and Broomsticks.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I agree with you. Um, and another way, like people talk about magic is animals speaking in of itself is sometimes talked about as magic in movies. And so I feel like that's also a pop cultural kind of connotation of magic is one thing that magic does is it makes animals speak. So I
Yeah.
don't think that's too far removed anyway from that.
Agree.
Um, we already mentioned that green elixir while conceiving or pregnant, it's not quite clear if it was during conception or pregnant or both. It turns her green, and is that also a source of her magic powers? It's not quite clear. Um, but green elixir has some effect on that.
It seems like it's both
Yeah,
during conception and while pregnant. I think that's when it happens. Yeah.
yeah. And then we already said this, but women only have magic in this universe. Men don't. That's still kind of binary, but animals have magic too. I'm on that team. So we can
That's
rate this
why I
movie.
really like animals having magic is because it gives three gender options.
Yeah, you can be man, woman, or animal.
Yeah.
I choose to be animal, I guess. Um,
Right.
s- uh, what is the name of the monkey? I always want to say hickory, but it's not hickory, but it sounds like hickory. That's the gender I am. I'm the leader of the monkeys. Chicory? Chicory, maybe? I don't know. Something
Alright.
like that.
I don't know who. I'm looking at the list and I don't know who all of the names are.
Monkey's name in Wicked. Let's find this out right now. Chistery. That,
Shistory,
yeah.
not
So
listed on the first set of those. That's fair. Okay. Shistory. You're gonna be Shistory. Sounds good.
that's my gender. So, out of the two genders, green and pink, or blue. Um, in this, so out of 10 Grimoires, how would you rate this movie? Do you have a favorite kill? There aren't really any kills. I mean, it's a musical, but however you want to interpret that question. Um, so yeah. Do y'all need me to go first? Y'all usually need me to go first.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it takes me a
I
minute to
will,
press a lot of buttons.
yeah, I
Okay.
will rate this.
Did you have a favorite death or takedown? We could say takedown.
Yeah, however you define it, however you define it. My favorite takedown, death, whatever. Uh, no, no, I'm not sure I have a favorite in this part. I have a favorite when it gets to part two.
It's
So
okay.
I'll talk
Your
about
rating
there.
comes first.
Yeah. My rating though is so here's the thing. I want to rate this lower because the music of this movie grates on my last nerve. And of the show in general. Like I cannot I Defying Gravity is so overdone. Like I cannot stand it. And yet this movie is so well done that it's like I
Mhm.
can't rate it low. If I was rating the musical, I'd probably rate it like a 7. And that's not saying it's bad. Like it's just it grates on me. So like it's fine, it's good, it's better than average, but like and I love
It's
the intentional way
overdone
that
for
goes
you
into the music.
personally. Yeah.
Yeah. But this movie is just so well done that
Hmm.
I have to give it an I almost said 10, but I'm gonna give it 9.5. It's still great on me a little bit, but 9.5. 9.5 Grimoires.
Nice.
And
That's
that's
a lot
pretty
of
much
memories.
all on the effort of the fantastic casting and visionary directing. And Cynthia and Ariana just both delights in their roles, just absolutely amazing portrayals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess my favorite takedown is No, I'll say this. My most favorite part is in Defying Gravity when she leaps out the window and it looks like she's falling. And this is something that is not done in the musical, is only done in the film. She leaps out the window, she loses her ability to fly because she has a moment of doubt and is falling and sees a reflection of her younger self in the glass. And glass is another thing that's brought up again and again in the movie intentionally. Um, since you mentioned that earlier, Susanna. Uh, sees a reflection of your younger self and in the mirror and in a way that our therapists have been telling us for years to heal our inner child. She addresses her inner child and says, "Not today. I am laying this self-loathing to rest and this self-doubt to rest, and I am going to make peace with you and be the person who you deserve to grow up to be." So that's my favorite takedown.
I love that. I love that.
I don't know how that can fit on a tombstone, but I trust your wisdom, Susanna.
I have no. That's what I was thinking.
I love that piece.
Again, I'm preaching tonight, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like, just FYI, I'm gonna say, Fu trauma busting.
Yes, that's a great way to
Oh,
encapsulate that.
for like,
Food, as in FOO, family of
yeah,
origin.
capital F, lowercase o, capital O, family of origin. Our friend, the podcast River, is always saying FOO when she means family of origin, and and it's funny. I consider us, Emily, be proud of me. So I call us Foo Fighters.
Yeah, I like it.
But like, um, so that's what Foo means when you see
I love
Foo
it.
trauma busting.
Yeah.
I love it.
What about either of you?
I I like the music. I have a shirt. I
It's
didn't buy
fair.
this shirt. I
Absolutely
was
fair.
gifted this shirt. For our listeners, it says, "Everyone deserves the chance to fly." It is a wicked shirt. Um, and there's like something holding me back from a 10. And I think it might be my impatience.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's true. It's hard to judge this as a whole because it's not a whole, it's a half.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go 9.5 too.
I like it.
That half of the grimoire just floating over there with my impatience. Um, and I don't, this is also going to be another one, Susanna, that you have to kind of figure out. But um, the moment at when they're arriving at school, they've arrived at school. They're in that like big courtyard and stuff. And both Nessa and Elphaba tell whatever professor or staff person or faculty or whatever, um, not to grab Nessa Rose's wheelchair and push her. Um, and then she does it anyway. And um, and Elphaba's reaction feels like a takedown of, I don't know, ableist paternalism,
Yeah, I like it.
ableist
Death to
microaggression.
ableist paternalism.
Yeah. Yeah. The takedown of ableist paternalism that just like puts a stop to it. Um, Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say infantilization bouncer.
Oh.
How's that? Is that good?
I like
Yeah.
Okay.
it.
And you said 9.5?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Um, honestly, there are so many really, really great movies, but for me, the takedown is. I have to type and also speak. Um, I'm going to call them the autism quips, where like like it's like
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Where she is
Uh-huh.
basically the emperor has no clothes on, where
Yeah.
she's just not,
She's
you
like,
know.
you have no power. Correct.
I love it.
I,
Correct.
Agreed.
Yeah.
alas, did not have a 9 3/4 because I don't want to do anything that has to do with like she who will not be named.
Mm,
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I am going to have to go with a 10 and just round up because I
I
think
love
it's a
it.
10 of a movie. I don't know what
Yep.
the second half is like, but I'm going to give it 10 because it, especially in like comparison of what else is out
Mhm.
there these days, um, especially with like the levels of marginalization allegory that happen in here, the different levels that I don't even think that we got to. That it just there are so many levels. Not, I mean, Emily touched on one of them. Like what Emily touched on is like a 202 or a 301 level class, right? Like
Mhm.
there are ways of being an ally that aren't pushing the wheelchair. Like they're
Mhm.
like one of the things I learned in my recent adulthood is that like there are ways of um, being an ally to folks of color that can really harm them. Like if you like you can really if you and I mean like standing up for folks of color has to have a context, because if you're not careful about the context under which you stand up for them, then you're putting them on the spot and that puts them in danger. Like there are times where you can stand up for them, but what you're doing isn't necessarily putting your white body in between them and danger. It's actually pushing them closer to danger. And you have to be careful that you're not doing that, right? So,
Yeah.
there's levels of allyship that you learn over time. And I haven't seen a movie in a very long time that actually, like, starts to get into the levels. And
Yeah.
so, because of that, I have to give it a 10. I really appreciate that. I would
I
give
like
it a
it.
3/4 if I could, because I'll get to that with the rating. So I mean with the
Yeah, you
with
had.
the with the test.
Yes.
So I think
Okay.
it's a 10, but I just
Yeah, you said you wanted to say something about the rating when we got there, or do you want to save that for the test?
it's for the test. I meant the test.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I kept saying
Okay.
rating because I have them in the same
Bec-
queue at the
Yeah,
bottom of the OBS streaming
I
thing.
like it.
And
Yeah.
apologies, I meant the test.
So that's great. That's great. This
Speaking
is
of,
our, yeah, this is our highest rated movie this so far. Or no, I think Bed Knobs and Broomsticks is higher because I rated it like a 20 out of
we
10
have a couple that are above 10, but we've had just some really
this
good
season, I mean.
movies this season.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so does it pass the HNAC test? And I wanted to initially say, since this is the story's not over, it's hard to really judge it here. We will have to wait till part two to find out. But also, I think we do actually already find out in this movie if it passes, because the movie begins with a character doing certain things
Yeah.
that the second movie will lead to. And because of that, I will say it does not pass the HNEC test.
Huh.
And the character I'm speaking about specifically is Glinda. And although she makes efforts towards passing it, since those are not consistent, um, even in this film itself, and she still tends to side with ease of what
chooses Oz. Yeah.
ease of
Convention.
her life and stuff. I do not think she
Mm.
passes it.
Agree.
Hmm.
My
I
Go ahead,
am,
Emily.
I was just gonna say I'm holding out final verdict on this.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yeah. I did bring up the HNAC test with our tech study today though,
Oh, I love it.
and Peter and John. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Not
what
sure.
did you want to say about this, Susanna? Tell us all your
I
thoughts.
my concern is like I love the defying gravity moment, regardless,
Hmm.
but like,
Mhm.
but it was right after the monkeys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I felt like that is I loved Elphaba through the whole thing, and I loved Elphaba at the defying gravity rising up da da da. But when I put
Hmm.
that next to the monkeys and that she had grief for a moment and then shoo, just double down on her own
Yep.
oppression and rising out of that, I had issues with that because it felt
Hmm.
so familiar. It felt so familiar in like the cishets that I know and the white people that I know that have done a similar thing, where it's like, okay, there, this, I've done a thing that's hurt another person, or I've done a thing that's an enabled further oppression of an already oppressed person. Like these monkeys did not look happy to begin with. Okay, they looked like
Yep.
they did not look they looked like they needed a union. You know what I'm saying? And like
Hmm.
they did not look happy to begin with. They did not look like the most powerful of people or with a whole lot of power, institutional power to begin with. And she harmed them and it was painful and she felt grief over it. And then she saw other people like using what she had done for their own political gain. But rather than come to terms with that, she focused only on her own
Yeah.
escaping, her own oppression. And that's a tricky one. And I get that it's like
I
advanced step out of it situation,
yeah.
but we all do it and we all need that advanced.
Uh-huh.
All of us who have any kind of like power, any of us who have any kind of privilege, that's the final test for us is when
Hmm.
when our marginalization comes into play but our privilege harms somebody else. How do we rise above without ignoring where our privilege has held someone
Yeah.
down? And that is very tricky. It's advanced, it's hard.
Hmm.
And we want to first do the MAGA thing and move to our own identity, right? Like we're like
It,
the low income, not getting health insurance, not getting support, da da da, go to MAGA. But instead of seeing how that like instead of balancing where the privilege holds people down but where the oppression is
yeah.
keeping you down, like instead of balancing those two things, she just picked her own identity and rising above her own issues
Yep.
as opposed to like balancing it. And that's where the grace is. That's where the I mean, for me, that's where the Christianity is. That's where
Yeah.
my Christianity saves me. That's where my salvation is that my Christianity tells me that yeah, I can be saved, yeah, I can be risen above, yeah, I can be forgiven, or I can be risen above the things that have held me down. But I also must acknowledge how I've harmed other people, and I have to take that with me in the rising. And I don't
Yes.
think she did.
Yeah. This is, I'm so glad you bring this up because again, this comes into play a lot in the second film. None of us have seen the second film, but from seeing the musical, and since the second film is based on the second act of the musical, a lot of what we can expect a lot of the second film to talk about is this. And the book does an even more explicit job than the musical. I'm interested to see how the movie does. But Elphaba, from beginning in the book, is very intentionally following this narrative of this woman who finds her own, this oppressed woman who finds her own empowerment. And then the book, we're going to talk about this in our lit retrospective, twist that into saying, we're rooting for her, and yet also she's also doing some harmful things, and that is also leading to this. So she is the wicked is being thrust upon her. This is the very question of the first movie, of the
Mm-hmm.
first song of the movie. The wickedness is being thrust upon her, and also she is doing harmful things that give her that moniker of wicked too. And there are ways that the book does that really well. Um, and I'm interested to see how the movie does it. So yeah, so all this is to say, come part two, we're gonna have a lot of
I
conversation
mean,
about this.
like,
I'm super
to
excited.
be
Yeah.
clear, I have not read the book. I
Yeah,
have not read the book.
Yeah.
This is how I
Which is
feel.
part of like, yeah.
And I mean, like, I do this too. That movement where she moves to rise above, it feels like a trauma collision. She harmed somebody
yeah,
else.
for
She is
sure.
being harmed. And so she had the knee jerk move to protect herself. And in protecting herself, she freed herself, but it had a cost, and somebody else bore the cost. And so the question is, how do we
Yeah,
find our freedom? How do we
there's
find our liberation without making somebody else pay its price?
yeah. Since we talk about Doctor Who so much on this podcast, a very great scene where this shows up in Doctor Who as well is in the 10th Doctor's run on which we actually covered this very episode on a BooTube, the two-parter where they meet this being that's supposedly Satan or something, Rose and the 10th Doctor, and the Ood are involved and stuff. And at the end, the Doctor saves Rose, and she says, "What about all the Ood?" And the Doctor says there was not enough time. There was enough time that he could have saved the Ood or Rose, maybe even both. However, the Ood's life, many of them, compared to one companion, Rose, were deemed expendable, so he
Mhm.
could save Rose. So again, the monkeys are in this sense be very intentionally depicted as who is expendable in the climax of this film, and it's the monkeys.
I mean, this is the horror of the crucifixion for me. This is the Jesus be a winged monkey.
Hmm.
Like, this is the horror of the crucifixion for me. Who pays the price for my liberation? On whose back am I lifted up?
Mhm.
Right? It's not just. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many different facets of Christianity that I like, but this is the one that's the hardest for me to swallow. But I felt like the winged monkeys felt most like the gospel to me than anything we've covered so far. You know,
Yeah,
because like Jesus be a winged monkey, who paid the price for her to rise up, and like that's the
yeah.
sacrifice. And
And this is, and to bring
ouch.
this into a real world example, something that often happens when an unjust shooting of typically an unarmed black man happens. There is this strong urge within liberal circles to say this person, to try to say this person was flawless in order to not deserve being shot.
Yeah.
And that is not good. People
Right.
are complex,
Yeah.
even martyrs.
Yeah.
And that there needs to be room for people to make mistakes and
Mm-hmm.
also still not be deserve to be shot.
Yeah.
Both need to be true. And this is kind of that story with Alphaba. She deserves liberation and also she makes mistakes. But because she makes mistakes doesn't mean she doesn't deserve liberation.
Right.
It's a both end.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're preaching all sorts tonight. My
Yeah.
autism is requiring my sunglasses go back on, uh, in case you're wondering why those reappeared. Um, do you have any jump scares, Emily?
I
No.
had my
No,
like
I do not.
my I neither did I, but like my heart stopped when she said you have no real power. Like I felt like
That, I love it.
Yeah, I
breathless.
was like,
Yeah.
It just it also I didn't understand the point of that theater style of the like brazen, even though you know who I am as a person, but I still didn't understand the point of that because I love metaphor and I love allegory, I love discussion and deconstruction and all the things, but like I didn't understand the point of it. But right then the point came so clear to me, like the whole in all of this movie of all this metaphor and allegory, all of it everywhere, and dripping with it. For a moment, it
Hmm.
all fades away, and it's just like in your fucking face. And I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
My heart, like, it just, wow.
Maps. Yeah. There are lots of compelling ways to tell a story. And I love that this movie uses multiple. And it goes against the arguments that there are only one way to tell, or a better way to tell a story. Like another movie we just covered, like the last movie we covered is another example of this, Love Witch, where the main characters, and that's one we're supposed to like, and yet it's still teaching us and telling us a story by engaging in our anger at like, why the fuck are you doing this? So, um, well, our very next movie which in theory is going to be next Tuesday. We'll see. It's Practical Magic with River Cook Needham.
One of my top
Returning.
3 favorite movies in the world.
I'm
I'm
super
so
excited to talk about
excited.
this. And again, this is another one where I'm so tempted to want to talk about the book nonstop and the sequel and the prequel, but we're going to focus on the movie. We have a lit retrospective for a reason this season. There's so many good books. Um,
I'm excited
because
for
the movie,
all of our next episodes, all the remaining ones.
yeah,
Um,
the movie is very good. The movie is very good in the story it tells, even if it's a very different one from the book. So that's it for this episode. Our theme music was by Matt May, and the music for Wicked was by Stephen Schwartz. And our super witchy techie magic was by Susanna Porter. We release seasonally with a live video on Tuesday evenings or Wednesday in this case. Audio on your favorite podcast provider on Thursdays, typically. Please comment, rate, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, and on Facebook, and on all the social medias. Support us on Patreon. As we said, you get exclusive to so much stuff, including the story I'm going to tell Emily and Susanna as soon as we go off live. So you'll get to hear that. And you get BooTube episodes, you get more bonus content, you get all sorts of tea. By going to patreon.com/horrornerds at church, only $5 to sign up. Cheaper than Green Elixir, I would imagine costs.
no
And
doubt.
also, and
What?
also, your purchase of a Patreon subscription, even for 1 month, supports queer art, indie
Yes.
queer art. So important in this day and age. We're not AI.
Indeed.
All our own hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Follow us on social media, Facebook and Insta at Horror Nerds at Church and Blue Sky, and Twitter. Yes, we're still on Twitter for now. HNAC POD for all the latest updates about upcoming films, news, and other announcements, or at least latest updates when I can get freaking Vista to work. It's still not working for me. Until next time, everyone deserves the chance to fly.
fly.